Well, welcome to Derp with Kurp. I'm your host, Kurp. What a great Derp with Kurp I got today, because I finally got Mark Windows on from a channel I enjoy a lot called Windows on the World. So I'm going to have him just explain, well, we're going to talk about the fourth world. We're going to talk about a lot of good shit. I recommend this guy a lot, so I'm very happy to finally get him on. So bring Mark in here, other Mark. Hey, Mark, thank you for coming on my dumb show.
Thanks for having me, Kurt, and thanks for plugging the show. It's great. A lot of your listeners have been tuning into some of the shows, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, you got a lot of the first one I told you. The first one I found was your Egyptian crowd control one about the pharaohs, and the thing about so my friend Mike Malice has that Wallace Budge book, that you were talking about. I guess he's like supposedly the real Indiana Jones, and I've never read it. But was your take on it that it was just a form of OCD institutionalized for their religions for these pharaohs? Is that Wallace Budge's assessment, or that's what you took from reading it?
That's what I took from the whole thing after years of research. But Budge was good because he was a pure Egyptologist. He was there at the time when the excavations were going on. So he had first-hand knowledge. So Budge is a very credible person to look into when we're talking about this Egyptology, which now has become anything from space aliens to, or ancient aliens and all this stuff. It's kind of muddied the waters to the point where history can be anything you want it to be. And I like history to be decoded and look at the outcomes. What is the driver of the outcome? And with the pharaohs, they were poster boys for the priesthood. So this is a very important thing to talk about, I think, because we're talking about systems of government, and I've covered that quite a lot.
Oh yeah, well, I think it is a very important thing to talk about because when you think about how inbred, Akhenaten, I keep bringing this up to people, but those weird statues where they say he looks like an alien. I mean, maybe he's a snake man, but keep in mind he's severely inbred, worse than those European ones where they just died out. Blanking on their name, the Spanish family, the Habsburgs.
Yes.
He's inbred more than a Habsburg. His head's going to look a little weird. Okay. And
yes. And also, I think that they were grossly exaggerating the looks of the people, because I've been to the British Museum and I've seen a lot of the statues. I've been to Egypt, I've been to the pyramids, and it looks like they're glorifying to the extent that they look actually as though they're not really human. And that is the point, I think, that they were representing themselves as the gods to the people.
Yeah, right. And that, Interesting. Well, you look like really wealthy people now, like Larry Ellison creep. All these people get so much work done. They look like it. My cuckoo theory about aliens at the end of the day is that they're interdimensional trillionaires that transhumaned, and now they can't transhuman back. So,
that's their problem, isn't it? And I think that you've made a good point in a way, because what is the purpose of this type of governance, the governance that we see on the planet at the moment? It doesn't really have any positive and useful outcomes. So therefore, I talk about the creation of a new civilization. And then I look back at older civilizations to see how they prepared for what was going on. And that took us back, of course, to the Druids and ancient Britain and the Shattered Isles series, which really took me a long time to get into. And I did a lot of research on it, and a lot of stuff points that way. But what they were very aware of was that cataclysms could be incoming at any time, and there needed to be a priest class and people in different regions who could communicate with each other if anything happened, and places for them to go. Therefore, the dolmens, which they say dolmens and cromlechs. Dol is a stone table. That's what it means. We have a lot of these in Britain, and they go, of course, right across to Normandy. They've even got them in Korea. But I believe they were kind of primitive bomb shelters where people would go to get away from the incoming debris, because there have been these cometary catastrophes. We're living in a very, very peaceful time environmentally at the moment. The Earth has gone through absolutely cataclysmic changes, and people have been wiped out. And that's why it's important that if this happens again, that there are people on the planet who can communicate with each other in different areas and be able to actually start something again. Because what we see is everything's dumbing down. We're seeing the end of a civilization, which is why I find this theory and concept of government so important.
Yeah, well, actually, Mark is messaging me. I guess we have those dolmens in the northeast coast here in America. I didn't know that. We have
Well, what's interesting is they're turning up in lots of different places, and they're categorized differently, you see, because in Britain, they were also called passage graves. And there's a place called West Kennet Long Barrow. And I went in there. It's got megaliths outside. It's very near Stonehenge. But you go in and there's 4 rooms in there. Why would they build an underground chamber where you can conceal the entrance merely as a burial site? It doesn't make sense. You just bury the people. I know we had mausoleums, but what they're saying now is that in the excavations, they're saying, well, the skeletons that were put in there way after these things were built and used. So they were used as graves afterwards. So we're going back to something which really fascinated me. And I got into the work of William Comyns Beaumont through a friend of mine who curated the books from the du Maurier family because he was related into them.
What's the du Maurier family? I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, well, I thought it was completely nuts, Kurt. I thought it was completely nuts that Britain had been the center of this civilization. We haven't got time to get into all that tonight, but if you look at Britain's Shattered Houses,
I know a bunch of people that are high up and elite definitely think that. I mean, without a doubt. The whole thing we have now, I keep bringing up tragedy and hope to everybody ever since my Rabbi Richard Grove sent it to me. That Anglo-American world power, and even America going back to, what's his name? Is it Bacon? The one that wrote Shakespeare's plays, who wanted America.
Yeah, well, there's some controversy about that, Kurt, because my friend Nick Ollerstrom's written a book, and he reckons it was William de Vere who wrote the Shakespeare plays. But
really, de Vere?
Yeah, I would say that it was more likely to be a group of people because the plays actually got worse, and it ends with Cymbeline, which is probably his worst ever play. So if you keep writing plays, it's like if you go on stage, you usually get better, don't you? You don't get worse at something usually, unless there's like lots of
the writer. It's like a Harvard Lampoon situation.
Yeah,
like I wrote on a lot of shows, and I got friends. I've seen TV shows where like I could tell my friend worked on it, stopped working there because it's immediately not as well written. If you really know a lot of writers. I never heard that. That's very interesting. The play is very interesting about Shakespeare. I didn't know that at all. But anyway, they thought this was New Atlantis and half the founding father. I just saw a thing that George Washington, like our flag is off his family's coat of arms. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I knew about the beginnings of the American flag through those books and the way it was changed and where it came from. I mean, the idea of the New Atlantis fits in perfectly with Britain as the center of global power, which it saw itself as with the social engineers who are now implementing the Agenda 2030 goals are really out of the City of London. These are just new systems of governance all coming from the same place, but none of them have been very successful. And this is, I think, the key point that it's all about management of ourselves. I think that's really important at this particular point because a lot of people get very disempowered when they're looking into this stuff. And I love going down these rabbit holes. I love the occult. But the thing is that a lot of this stuff is actually about management of people, and it's very, very simple. And I think that that's the main driver of the shows over the past 5 or 10 years, really. Because once you know the basics, you think, okay, let's really take this apart and make it simple. How are people controlled according to their genetics, according to their programming? That once you know that, a lot of other stuff will just fall into place rather than going it's Republican, Democrat, or it's the Tories and Labour Party.
It's such an obvious.
Yeah, I know. It's
two-lie system, you called it. You're right. It's a two-lie, two ass cheeks. It really is amazing. The people that are like high up in I know people that are. They're friends with like big politicians and stuff, right? And they would look down on like a Crip or a Blood, but they use the same colors and they have the same setup.
Yeah, well, we're talking about a global mafia here.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the people who are in charge now, calling themselves elites, are not elites; they're degenerates. I remember talking to Anthony J. Hilder before he died. Unfortunately, he had Alzheimer's. He kept Anthony J. Hilder. Look him up. Okay. He was one of the first people talking about conspiracy stuff in the 60s. He's a bit of an actor, and he was involved in the music business as well. But I spoke to him just before he died. I knew somebody who looked after his website. And I said, they're rather degenerate, these people. And he says, no, Mark, they're very degenerate. They're very degenerate. And I think that's the key point, because I think it comes down to having true morals and true integrity. If you've got integrity, you can see through a lot of this stuff, because look at what's happening in the Middle East, Gaza. The outcome that's happened was always going to happen. Zionism was always heading in that direction. And once it was fully out of control, as under Netanyahu, that was inevitably going to happen. I went there in the Second Gulf War in '93. I was in Egypt. I went across there. The sonic booms were going off in the background. American woman on the coach in the Sinai Desert said, we were up going to the Golan Heights. She said, what are those booms going off? And the tour guide said, didn't you know Iraq's invaded Kuwait? The American woman turned around and said, how could we have let this happen?
Yeah. Boy, that is such a different mindset. Because I remember that around that time, they were making movies. What was the movie? Canadian Bacon. I think Michael Moore directed. It was a comedy with John Candy, and it was all about the Cold War had ended, so we didn't have anybody to fight. And Alan Alda was the president, and he was begging Canada. He was begging Russia to get back in a fight, but they didn't want to. And then we go to war with Canada. That's how much it was like, oh, we won. We're obviously the kings of the world. They didn't really say it outright, but they did. Like they didn't say we rule the fucking world, but they also, everybody felt like it. If we want to go do something, we could just do it. Of course, we won the Cold War, so that means this is our domain.
I mean, it's always the same template. This is what I found really interesting with governance, especially now since we got into what's called Sustainable Development Agenda 2030. The way that works global to local is very, very simple. It's through infiltration, NGOs, stakeholders. And of course, it's all about financial parasitism. It's got nothing to do with the environment whatsoever. Right. And that's why I thought, we talk about the fourth world, wilderness.
That's a good lead into
like that. It's kind of interesting because it's kind of the background to the governance system as it is now. I mean, what we're having, globally, the disruptions, the wars, and so on. The interesting thing about it is that the global to local thing is where people can actually take back their own power. And I always thought that was the most interesting part of.
Explain that, will you? What do you mean by that?
Well, for instance, in the UK, they started closing off all the roads. They called it Mini Holland. I was in this place called Waltham Forest in East London, one of the first boroughs to basically lock down. And I found that with closing off 2 roads within that borough, they could enclose 250,000 people.
Wow.
And when I was doing my gigs years ago, about the same time, the pubs would be saying, the pubs are all closed now in England, of course, Britain. But everywhere I used to do a gig has gone, and it's not that long ago. But what happened was that there was mapping going on overhead, and they were looking at control and management of the population. But when we think about this, it doesn't really make sense because it's never worked in human history. Right. So why would it work now? So the technocracy. Yeah, this technocracy that was imposed in Britain, it's all done through the local town hall. I learned an awful lot from people in America because they were taking it on. I saw a great presentation on Agenda 2030 in about 2009, 2010 by someone called John Anthony. And it started out with my neighbor was put in handcuffs for mowing their lawn. And this is really what they were trying to impose. And I started to see it, and I saw this governance system. Then I saw the same governance system within the protest, so-called protest movement. It's a template. So they talk about Soros, but that system of facilitators, co-facilitators taking over your town hall meetings, it's the way it's done. And it's done with no public participation, but with the illusion of participation and under the banner of community. And that once I found this stuff out about 2010, 11, I was like really trying to get something going in the UK. And unfortunately, everything's gone backwards and we're going into the literal wilderness of the mind, which is the fourth world.
Where did the wilderness of the mind term come from, by the way?
Well, the wilderness of the mind was actually a term that was brought in through the UN. And if you look at a video on YouTube called UNCED, UNCED, the Elite Plan Well Ahead, there was a man called George Hunt, and he was an environmentalist, and he managed to get into the conferences that went into the Rio conference in '92, which sparked off the whole of sustainable development and got it into global to local government and then into policy. But what happened was he attended this meeting by default because somebody couldn't go. And he was so horrified as to what he heard from Edmund Rothschild, Maurice Strong, and Stephen Rockefeller, and bankers, investment bankers, basically saying the cannon fodder needs something simple to latch onto. In other words, sustainable development, or the Gaia cult, save the planet for the World Bank. So that to me was the key. As Mikhail Gorbachev said in 1996, environmentalism will be the key which unlocks the new world order.
Well, they all love that. They all bring that new world order up. So global governance, I've heard the term, but I mean, that just refers to that. It's just another name for that, isn't it? Or is it like...
Well, global governance is unstructured in the eyes of the public. Therefore, the globalists, Jack Attali wrote a book called Millennium Winners and Losers in the 90s. And I wouldn't advise anyone to read it. It's really boring because these people are really boring. Yeah. But when you look at some of the quotes, they are very particular as to what they're talking about. They're talking about where are the resources on Earth now? Where are we going to plunder next? How we're going to get those resources, how we're going to take over the country, how we're going to control it. So there's no sense or there's no intellect in what they're doing. So when it's applied globally to locally, it's the same thing. Right. Unstructured global governance is in your local plan. They have a thing called the local plan. Deborah Tavares was very good on this. About 15 years ago, I was in touch with her and she was going into these meetings. But to me, it's important, Kurp, because it's where people can take their power back, because those people in their local council, they can do something about. They can try and vote them out. We did shows on this. I did a show called The Solution. It's maybe before you were listening, but this is kind of a background as to the whole way we're governed. And to me, the real power through knowledge comes through knowing how these simple templates work. Yeah. And once I cracked a few of them, it was really empowering and interesting, but nobody would take it on. They go, oh yeah, but as soon as this Labour government are out, things will change. Oh no, we're back to square one again.
Yeah, no, I know that. That's a very right now, especially, and I don't think it's normal. I don't think it's like I remember people being stupid, and I remember being stupid, but I don't remember this level of not remembering anything. So here's something on Jimmy Dore show with I sidekick on that I still can't get over. The clips of General Petraeus sitting down with the ISIS Al-Qaeda leader who they installed in Syria, who's supposedly better than Assad. No one from Syria would say that. Only the demented fucking... Anyway, Petraeus is sitting down with the guy who's standing behind Daniel Pearl in all likelihood in that video. Okay? And he's like, how are you holding up? He's talking to him like they're on... Like he's, it's Oprah or something. And Guantanamo's still open. Like, we still have Guantanamo. We've got your dick blown off in war over there. And you sit here and watch the general sit down with the guy. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I explain it to people, and they'll go, oh, a little bit. Well, a couple people will really be like, that is the craziest shit. But most people just kind of like, I don't like, they're trained to blank out. I don't think it's by chance.
I think also, I think it comes down to this individual responsibility thing again, because I think it comes down to really connecting with your conscience and looking at where things really are and where you are. Because the idea, I think, for me, of what's happened, especially in the UK, is people became more dumbed down after the COVID agenda. And that was a psychological assault, fair enough. But to me, I found it extraordinarily empowering because I thought, they're off. This is war. And I remember when it first started, a friend of mine drove from Croydon, which was about 22 miles from where I lived. A friend of mine, Kevin, who's now dead, he's done a few shows with me, but he was really up with what was going on. And he said, Mark, they're closing all the roads. They're locking us down. It's happening. I want to come over. We've got a chat. So it was really funny. So he managed to get over. And of course, the whole thing was nonsense. They weren't really closing the roads down. People were watching their televisions and thinking they couldn't go out. But he got to me. And he said, where we're going to meet, because I don't talk on the phone. I said, okay, Lidl car park. Lidl car park, the supermarket, right? So we've got a Lidl car park in Sheerness. And he said, I'm in the silver car. I said, well, just wait in there a minute and don't make it obvious and come over to my car. And then we both sat there and thinking, okay, well, what now? Yeah, but it actually proved a lot, because from then on, I could see all the things that I'd learned about were happening. In other words, everything they do is crap. And in the West, people have this particular view, like what you just said.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, say, I knew people from Syria, I know people from the Middle East, know people from all over the place. I've done quite a lot of traveling in Europe as well, and all over, generally for quite a long periods of time. But people do not take Western media seriously in most of the countries.
Right.
And I think that's what we have to remember. It's a bit of a laughing stock across the world. And in the former communist countries, in what was the Eastern Bloc, they don't listen to their government at all. And there's regularly outbursts against politicians. When we see these people fighting in the town halls and in public meetings, go, oh, that's really uncivilized. No, this is people saying I've had enough. But because, especially in Britain, it's very insular because it being an island and it being so overtly controlled that people don't realize how overtly they are controlled. And that goes to people who see. The globalists need the anti-globalists as well. So everyone gets involved. So the people who think they're opposing it are also driving it. And that was my big rift after the COVID thing. I thought, you lot are being steered like a bunch of sheep. I'm trying to tell you, and you're attacking the messenger. So
the dialectic, they call it.
The dialectic.
That's how it's gain of function research as government is how I look at it. And it's
perfect.
It's like, let's put these things together, and then whichever the strong, and we'll make the pain of separation more than the pain of having to come together and do what I want.
Yes.
When I was in England in 2011, I did the Real Deal Comedy Jam. It was like an all black comedy tour.
Mm-hmm.
That the guys that ran it, I really fucking love them guys. But anyway, I remember watching British TV, and I'm watching the news, and they're talking about how British people are really good at queuing. They're like, well, we in England, we all know how to queue. I didn't know what the hell that meant. And standing in line, it turned out, and I was like, it's such a telling thing to me. That's you go to the bank and they got that rope thing, and no one's in line, but you walk through it anyway. Like
that's right. I know. And you get a real bollocking for kind of jumping it or not realizing that there's a queue.
Am I allowed? This rope is here for a reason.
Like it almost gets into, well, I pay my taxes, why don't you? Sort of argument straight away. And I think that was particularly telling in COVID, because I remember going to the local supermarket and there was this ridiculous queue, and they were all standing about 3 meters apart, and it really sorted the wheat from the chaff. Because people that I thought will never believe this were going, hey, don't get too close now. Right. And I took my car in for an MOT during the COVID thing. And this fella, I thought, oh, he won't be falling for this, because he'd painted this old army truck and he was traveling around in it. I thought, he knows what's going on, So I took my car in, and he goes, oh, don't come into the garage. Step out the vehicle, please. Step out the vehicle, open the windows. Let's get some air in before we get near the vehicle. I thought, I couldn't believe it, And
I remember from the AIDS times. Remember when AIDS came out and they were like, you can get every stupid story how you could catch AIDS.
Oh, yeah,
It reminded me of that. And Fauci was there at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very similar, but they tried it in 2009 with the bird flu, and it hadn't worked, and they got sued, didn't they? But what was interesting, there's a paper called A Safer Future, which came out in 2007. I did a show on it years before COVID. Mm-hmm. And it was how countries would be brought into line through the consensus. In other words, that all other countries under the banner of global governance, under the banner of Agenda 2030, would actually ostracize and punish any country which didn't go along with the UN WHO agenda. The World Health Organization were talking about pandemics as a driver of change in 2007, and they were saying this is going to happen. So when it did happen, it was of no surprise to me at all. On the 11th of March 2020, I think it was, when they declared war. I just thought, right, we're off. And it was so badly executed. I was traveling all over the place. I was trying to get out of Britain. I got sent back once because I didn't realize that in part of Asia I was going, that they blocked everyone in Britain over Christmas. But I had a letter from their embassy saying, come in, And I thought, this is good. I got sent back. I was at Istanbul airport, 3:00 in the morning. Going, what am I going to do now? I had to go back, but then I got out again. But I realized that, you could fly anywhere. There weren't really any restrictions. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew how to enforce anything. And of course, the PCR test was just a scam. Absolutely.
I know. Is that amazing? Yeah. Those tests. When I remember going to, I had shows in Canada at Winnipeg, and the bullshit I had to go through. I take another test, like a PCR, like that day to fly, and then you had to fill out this book. Like, if you get COVID, where will you stay in Canada if you're And I'm like,
oh yeah, you had to have addresses.
I'm from here. I went to I don't what. It was so stupid. And I'm just filling out whatever. I fucking hate paperwork and everything that from the Prussian school that I hated growing up. And there's certain people that take such. It's like when my parents worked in recycling and trash management when I growing up in Jersey, and so I used to work for a recycler. This place, Colgate Recycling, and even back then, it was such an Italian money making scam. Recycling, okay, most of this stuff is not. So I already knew that, but what I didn't know until much later was that they weren't even recycling. They were just sending it to China and being like, "You throw this out." Until 2018.
Exactly. I mean,
so tell someone that, and especially girls. I don't know why, but I remember my girlfriend Tom, who's very. In fact, all the girls, chicks I date are ones that would know this kind of shit. They all still love recycling. There's something.
Oh yeah, it was funny
because
yes, there was a British singer. He's dead now, called Wayne Fontana, and I did an interview at the fake Bilderberg protest in 2013 in the UK. Goldman Sachs set up the fake protest to.
What was this? I don't know what this is.
The Bilderberg group met in Watford in 2013 in Britain, and they set up what they called a protest field. So I went there and I asked the police, I said, what's happening? The Hertfordshire police said, well, actually, Goldman Sachs are paying for all this. They're paying us to be here today to look after you lot. And I met this singer there called Wayne Fontana from the 60s. And he knew all about this stuff. And he was saying the same thing that you just said. He said, I keep telling my wife, it all goes into the same effing hole. But she's washing out the bean tins and she loves it.
It deeply comforts a lot of people on a level that's spiritual. And it's really like when you see that mechanism devoid of any actual like spirituality, it's just the rote practice of it. Well, it's like the crowd control. It's crowd control.
Yeah, it's the do-gooder syndrome, isn't it? It's that look at me, what I'm doing for the planet, which is where the globalists, admittedly, are quite clever because the virtue signalers and the people who want to be seen as do-gooders in the communitarian system will always be the biggest arseholes on the planet, but they will always appear to be doing the right thing.
Yeah, right. Well, even recycling without anybody looking, they want to do. Like, what's that? Those British guys, they had a show called Peep Show, but they have a sketch. It's like a meme where he's like, what if we sort our stuff in the right bins? He goes, isn't that pissing into the wind? He goes, it's super pissing in the wind, but there's nothing else we can do. There's something where it is like pissing in the wind, and people, without anybody looking, it's like if you rub rosary beads and pray to them, sorting the recycling. And I know, but I know a bunch of people like this, like they really.
Well, I think the entrainment has worked really well on a lot of people, to be fair. It's an entrainment exercise. It's to get used to artificial scarcity and to stop using more stuff. But the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that as long as corporations go along with it. Of course, they don't. No, so what you get is, we'll send it all to China and we'll pay carbon offset. But I've noticed it even with people that I know, they'll start with it. You'll go and see 5 boxes outside their house and they'll just go, oh, don't put that one in there. And they've been completely entrained into it. And that is micromanagement of people's lives, which is, of course, what this whole system's about. The technocratic system is about micromanagement of people.
Yeah, right. If I can install a miniature dictator inside of you, so then I don't have to worry so much.
And then that miniature dictator can be triggered when necessary to attack the useful target, which is the person who's the outlier. And that's how the system was rolled out in Britain from 2010 onwards through communitarianism. They recruited all these fake people and they started taking over the narrative of public opinion. Next thing, they were leading the councils. Very, very simple.
Well, my girlfriend used to work at the Getty Museum. She has it's called Bad Art Podcast, art history thing. And I was on the episode with it of talking about the extinction, that extinction agenda and the Just Stop Oil, where they throw shit.
Oh, well, that came out of Extinction Rebellion, which was another City of London project. Yeah. And anyway, it's the surviving Getty bitch is really behind it. She's some ex-heroin addict that's got a biohazard tattoo on her shoulder. Yeah. And AIDS. And it's like all these shitty rich people that are, or there's something, I mean, I'm not saying these people are that, but I know this is with like pedophile types. They're like, oh, humans are the worst. Is that because you're the worst and you're saying that now?
That's what I
think.
Yeah,
it's interesting that they always recruit one in the family. The intergenerational families always have one who looks like a bit of a dropout, who's going to lead the environmental movement. Oh, well, I'm a bit of a dropout. I spent a long time in South America with the indigenous people.
Oh yeah, there's not indigenous people like more than that one.
That's it.
It's first world. But these like stupid, a lot of things I would make jokes about have turned out to be like true, or the reason that you would notice and make a joke about it is because something's off.
Well, the whole essence of comedy, as you know, is it has to be about the truth.
Yeah. So a bunch of my friends, I always remember. I have a friend, and this is a guy that went to Harvard, and he was one of these guys that was like, "Don't do your own research," which I'll never be able to get over that somebody said that publicly.
Yeah.
Now, friends of mine, I'm always was like, smarter than. I'm like not smart enough to be at higher levels, but I'm not too smart for certain levels. So it's a real unenviable spot. But so friends of mine, when they heard "don't do your own research," they're not going to read anyway. So they're like, "Oh, good, I'm good." Oh, well, I was already going to not research anything. So
yeah, exactly. It's a bit like, oh, there's no point in going to that council meeting. There's no point in trying to stop that tower block going up. It's that mentality. But yes, it's very prevalent. I mean, I think the idea with all this is to disempower the individual. And what the most fascinating thing to me is really of what the individual can actually do, because there's no such thing as community rights, for instance. They always talk about community rights. There's no
Where
such
do you
thing
hear that? Community rights.
All rights come from the right of one individual within a community. But they're talking about the community as their community. That's the trick. And these systems are very, very simple if they are decoded. And that's why they don't want you to do any research. Because if you did some research and read a few documents, you go, I know how it works now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's shocking is you find out it's not that complex. And in fact, I expected something way smarter than what it turned out to be.
Yes, it's almost disappointing, isn't it? Because you go into this, oh, I'm looking into this. Oh, God, it must have started in the 1700s after the Enlightenment. No, it's just a bunch of greedy bastards who are exploiting a group known as the public,
Well, the reason I started looking at all this shit was as a joke about some extraterrestrial race called the Tall Whites that I had never heard of, that I heard of in 2011 in a random article about a Farsi newspaper that said Obama was in league with the Tall Whites. And I never heard of that shit. And I couldn't find anything about it. And then years later, during the pandemic, and this is where they really screwed up during the pandemic, because on lockdown, there's nothing to do but look into shit. I didn't have nothing else to do except look into things that I wouldn't have looked into. I'm not the only one that did that, So, and then once you just have a little bit, what Jimmy always says it. He always goes, Jimmy Dore says it. He goes, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's a fact. Once you see the thing, so I think people sense that innately too, and they'll go out of their way not to see it. So I'm going to have this dude, Ashton Forbes, on, who I like a lot. He has a whole orb theory that I subscribe to with the Malaysian plane. And the debunkings were all bullshit of it. Okay. And I think that guy did good work on that. However, he does not see, I don't know if he's Zionist or what his deal is, but he thinks it's preposterous that the Charlie Kirk shooting didn't happen how they say it happened.
I think that's the good point, Kirk, that people will get one thing and then they'll completely miss another when it's completely obvious.
Yeah, and I was like, why?
And that is a very good point about people. That's why I tried to talk about the global governance thing. They'll get something, they'll get the idea of what I'm saying. I used to do talks on it all over Britain. And they'd say, oh, I see that happening. I see that happening. And you'd see them a week later. They go, yeah, but once we get rid of this government, you think, oh, no, I completely waste my time.
Yeah. And that's best case. Worst case
kind
is
of going back to square one all the time that I can't understand.
Yeah. The best case is that they think that, oh, we'll just get a new president. Then the worst case is like this weird shit where like, somebody hates the Jews or I'm like, you're missing the entire point of this individual thing. Like you're just missing it completely. And then once you know how the trick works, it's just stoking people's little resentment. So this every one of these shit I'm watching now, I'll watch that movie Snake Eyes. They said, people say, oh, did it predict the Charlie Kirk shooting, because of the and I'm like, that's Brian De Palma made that movie. He's from the era when JFK happened. That's how all the assassinations happened. The same fucking way. They got three.
Exactly. You don't
they got
need
three patties and distractions.
Yeah. I think that's really funny because you can look into this stuff and go down all these rabbit holes, staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning and waking up with eyes out here, and you've completely missed the point because it was dead simple. It was like they wanted to go from here to here, so they needed to do that.
Well, that's why that scripture thing of them by the fruits of their works. That's a really apt saying. I mean, that's why I don't want to hear about your ideals and shit. Like, show me what the fuck. If I was in business viewing this, I'd want to see my goddamn results. I don't want to hear what your intentions are. I don't give a shit. So so for example, when Trump was reenacting Top Gun Maverick in Iran, shot for shot. And I'm like, I'm talking to my friend Ray, the comic Rich, who's really a funny guy. He's dumb as hell about every single thing. Really, but like, we would never win a war in Iran. Not only would we not win a war in Iran, we wouldn't win a war with China. We wouldn't win a war with any of these people they're talking about a war with. And the reason I know is because we haven't won a war in 80. How do you get a military-industrial complex and then never win a war again? How the fuck does that happen? Does anybody ask about that? We spent the most ever.
Exactly.
World War II, we didn't spend what we spend now. The one,
but Kurp, that's defense spending.
Yeah, and so now Trump, who was supposed to make it, he was supposed to cut that shit in half. That was his, his pretty work. The thing with Trump is it shows you how much the president does not control. It shows you right there how in charge the president is. You don't have to. I already know there's 8 levels of classified above his fucking head. So to me, that means your vote don't count with the president. That's all that means to me, because there's 8 levels above him that maybe aren't going to tell him what's up. The president, the most powerful man in the world. Well, he's not. The most powerful man in the world is not that powerful. I'm sure they all.
It's just once I think we understand these governing principles, things become very clear, and that's really been the message of what I've been trying to do, and I think what we're talking about here, because it's great and empowering to not to be involved in the conspiracy circus and the news cycle, which is going round and round and round. Once you see above and beyond that, then you can focus on things of real importance. And that's why I pulled away from most media. Once, as you say, once you get this stuff and you look at outcomes and objectives and you start thinking rationally, then you don't need to know the intricacies of the news cycle.
Yeah, I don't want to know either. I just like, so a friend of mine, Scott Horton, who's a real smart guy, he's written some really good books about the useless war on terror we had. I got one right now I'm reading. And he knows, he thinks 9/11 happened how they say. And I'm like, it's hilarious when we argue about it. And then he told me, he goes, well, I have a blind spot for anything like religious or supernatural, because you remember, Bohemian Grove, where they go worship an owl.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And there's a thing, and I have a bunch of friends like this, where they're like Ayn Rand, libertarian. It's like using half your brain, basically, to me. That's how I look at it. And, so once you've been kneecapped that way, where okay, I understand you don't believe it, but you understand there's a bunch of people. I just want to know what these people believe. All the rational scientists, I say this to Rogan because I want to talk to every physicist he has on. I watch all that shit. I wasted a lot of time trying to understand string theory, that nonsense. And I want to ask them, like, your science, you're a secular materialist. The people that pay for you to exist, they all think they came from Atlantis. The people above your head who fund your rational science, the shit they believe is crazy. Do you ever think about that?
It's also the sign that they're not true elites, you see. I don't think we should use this word elite to describe them. People who make themselves billionaires, who are operating as a sort of global mafia, are not the elite. So that is, to me, something that's really interesting. And I was always fascinated by people who actually were elite in their thinking. And I did have conversations over the years with these sort of people, but they have these blind spots, especially those in Britain, because they have this belief in the system. I knew a fellow who wrote a book called Who Owns the World? Every single piece of land in the world he'd mapped out. A lot of it was, of course, owned by the Vatican. And I heard lots of stories. I found lots of stuff. And this fella, he put me onto something called XRO News, which came out of the Sun newspaper, which is not a good sign. But I spent 3 hours in this private club with this journalist explaining the ins and outs of the simplicity of global to local governance. She took numerous notes, and I never heard anything about it again. And when I spoke to my friend about it, he then just went back into the two-party system. And these people, even those people who have a lot of information, still get trapped. So it's an interesting thing as to why people are able to join the dots. And I think it comes through life experience as well.
Yeah, definitely that.
You know, the school of hard knocks and all that sort of thing, and things you experience. I think, in actual fact, if you come face to face with how the system works and how truly corrupt and horrendous it is, and the things that happen to people on a daily basis, then you can step away from this idea. I remember years ago, there was this man called Barry George who was framed for the killing of the TV presenter Jill Dando. And we did a gig at this place called the Metropolitan Sports and Social Club, which was for the CID, right? The police. The Criminal Investigation Department, like detectives. And our drummer at the time we were in this dressing room, and a fellow walked in, CID fellow, said, "You all right, lads? You're going on at 9 o'clock?" Said, "Yeah, we're fine." And our drummer said, "What's happening with the Jill Dando case?" And he said, "My friend Hamish is on that case. And we are looking for probably an East European assassin. It was a professional hit job. She was on the doorstep and her head was held down. She was shot twice in the back of the head. And it's a hallmark of a certain gang and group connected with Eastern Europe." So who did they arrest? A kind of bumbling fella who had lots of pictures and memorabilia of pop stars, people like Freddie Mercury in the house. And it took his sister 10 years to get him out, I think. Maybe not 10 years, but it went on about 10 years. But the point was, I spoke to a barrister and I said, "Oh, that Jill Dando thing is completely wrong." He said, "Well, 12 good men and women found him guilty." I said, "Well, that doesn't mean he did it." And
because you lied to them?
Talking about. The belief in authority in people has to be destroyed, otherwise they never get anything.
I sold a show down here to this it's called Emergent Order. I'm in Austin, and anyway, it's like almost like a libertarian Daily Wire. They were paying for submission, so I sold a show called The Cutout, and it's all about, it's like The Office, but it's one of these like cutout organizations that they're working hard to prevent a minor decriminalization of cannabis flower. It's about their mission to make that happen. And the main guy, the character, it's just an unquestioning belief in authority in the system. And I have friends, I have a friend, a very good friend, whose dad went to West Point, and his dad's his dad will say things like, you did the right thing, but you did it the wrong way. Like, he's very big on the exact rules. And his dad has only moved to a certain point in the military because he's not corrupt. They tried to catch him with a honey trap at a hotel he was staying at, but he's just a straight arrow dude. So he didn't bite. And that's why he's not moving up. And you could never explain it to him. You could never explain
I think this is another point about governance. When people keep going on about Epstein and all the ins and outs of it, Epstein is a form of governance. He was there to do a job. He was compromised and compromised other people. That shot with Ghislaine Maxwell in the background, and Prince Andrew's got his arm around Virginia Giuffre, I think it is, the girl who committed suicide recently, was a setup. Ghislaine's in the background going, "Gotcha."
Yeah. And yes, right.
And you see, this is the thing, that once we start thinking, "Oh, these people are evil," no, it's governance. They are governing in a very corrupt way. And if you get to a certain level, they'll want you on side. If you're not on side, you could be a problem. Therefore, well, we don't want to kill you straight away, so we'll get something on you. Say, well, we've got a video. And that's all they need with most people.
Just think of like a business. If you start a business and
it's a business plan. It's a business plan for the world. Very, very simple.
Yeah. Well, the thing of like people, friends of mine started businesses. You might stumble in and not know there was already some kind of cartel, whatever your dumb business is. There's somebody that already was the top of it, and they don't want to see you come in, and they can rig the game against you depending on where you live. That's how everything works. So Joe Rogan's a good friend of mine, okay, and I'll see you all. There's all kinds of bullshit people say about him, but I know that guy's a straight up dude. Like one of the most honest, generous guys I ever met. And it's so bizarre to work this club because there's intel people in there because he had the biggest podcast in the world. So you think they're going to leave it alone and they're not going to send in spies and influencers?
I mean,
of course they are.
Even when I was at the People's Voice TV, which was this thing that David Icke set up in 2014, we had people in there. It was really funny. There was a woman there who said, I'm a video editor, nothing about her online. And she was there before everyone got in and after everyone left. And there was a party one night for one of the producers. And she'd been listening and watching everything I did since I got there.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine he was working on one of the shows. He said, she's a trained observer. I said, yeah, I know she's a trained observer. I said, I'm going to show you something in a minute. And I mentioned a couple of people who we'd uncovered as undercover assets within the so-called truth community. I mean, we talk about undercover police, right? And I mentioned them, and she went, she turned around like that, and he goes, fuck, mate, he couldn't believe it, And I said, I'll do it again in a minute. And we were laughing our heads off because they all knew each other. But this is what to be expected. I mean, when I was doing that show, there was a website set up purely to defame me. I thought, well, what am I doing that's so important? And then I find out that the two guys who turn up and we meet up have a drink with them at our meetup group in London, they were the two guys who owned the website that was defaming me.
Why were they doing it? Like, what did you do?
They were doing it because they were worried about what we were putting out about what was happening in the courts in the UK and the way local government was working. So I was doing a lot of shows about this, and people were coming out and they were having a big effect. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. People are always going to want to gatekeep.
Well,
so
local could be even worse. I mean, I know a bunch of people where there's a guy in Australia. I don't know him. He's a comic, but what the hell is his name? Friendly Jordies or something. But his local government is so fucking corrupt, and he started talking about it, and he started getting reprisals. It's really shocking. Like, and it's because locals even more. Like when I went to China, most of the people were pretty happy with like the overall China government. They weren't mad at the government. Their local leaders, they get real mad at. That's who they get really upset with. And those local leaders,
well, they've got the right idea then. I mean,
well, here's what happens. Because the penalties could be so harsh on a local guy where you get executed, like they don't dick around like they do here or every other Western country, like with high level corruption, they treat it. So now you're giving incentive to people who do really dastardly shit to cover up their crimes because they want to be executed. So you made it life or death for them. So let's say a car falls into a pothole in some province, like they gotta, for some reason, incentive now to bury you alive in there. They had when I was there, the guy before Xi, they used to have like a better Twitter in China, I guess. And I don't think they were slowing the internet down yet, but I think it was, I want to say monorail system. I don't remember what province, but apparently it was corrupt, that local area, and they built it poorly, Levy in New Orleans kind of construction. And so the train collapsed and the local government just buried the train. There were people still in there. But the thing is, it went out on their social media right away. So that guy I think the guy got executed who was responsible for that. And but then they made sure there was a nice slowdown for your internet because they don't want word traveling like that no more. That tower.
I mean, it's different degrees, isn't it? I mean, I think that once you see that system, then it helps a lot. And the former communist countries in Europe, they implicitly do not believe a word a politician says unless they know that they elected that person. And they know that a lot of them get paid off and that people are paid to vote for certain people. They know all this stuff. So that actually empowers you in a way, because then you think, okay, so we've got this lot and we get around it. So the more ingenuity comes around. It's like the COVID times, that was a little test for us. Okay, how do we get around it? Well, I can still travel. I can go here, I can go there. Doesn't seem to be much to it, really. And then you can get different degrees of it. But on the high level, of course, people will just get taken out all the time. But I think that it's also the way you engage with the system. In other words, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, because you can still get your information out without shouting your mouth off and becoming a target. I know
you can lie to me and I'll still find out what I want because I'm just going to get data either way.
Exactly.
And I can figure out why someone's lying to me. And the good thing about being on a news show is I can correlate a lot of wackier things. So sometimes I'm surprised at what's true that I would have never even thought was possible, or what I think is true, and I'm surprised at like my reasonable explanation that's not even close to what it was, because I just didn't have, I didn't have a certain perspective to be able to see certain possibilities. But there's a big thing to that school hard knocks thing, because I remember working for Sacha Baron Cohen. We got in an argument about Antifa. So it was a show called Who is America on Showtime. And I had a great time working on that, although it was him and his buddies from Oxford. And Oxford is like older than like the Aztec Empire or something.
Yeah, it's the training ground for useful idiots, spies, and other degenerates.
That's exactly right. And I don't even think you got to know you're in on it. I think you could just train them to you, but man who knew too little, and it, like a real Sean Penn.
Yeah, well, they're given this idea because they've got into Oxford that they're somehow elite thinkers. I mean, an ex-girlfriend of mine from a long time ago, she works for the BBC, and she has not changed since I was with her when she was 23. She's over 50 now, but she has not developed. So it's arrested development. I don't think she would even understand the things that I talk about. But that's the thing. She went to Oxford, you see.
Yeah, no, you learn how to get your brain compartmentalized into a certain way.
It doesn't mean anything as far as intelligence goes. What I will say about people who've been, say, to public school is that they learn the trivium. Logic, grammar, rhetoric. Therefore, when I've debated with these people, I like the way they debate, because they debate in a way which keeps the thing engaged and moving. And usually they will listen to your point and you can reiterate and get something going. I remember talking to this. It was an ex-army fella who'd been in Nepal with, telling the Gurkhas what to do and all this sort of stuff in Duran. And it was a rather boozy evening with this another friend who was a lawyer. And he says, I don't agree with everything that you say, but you're a very good conversationalist. and I actually appreciate that level of intellect.
I would appreciate that.
But the thing is that they're stuck. They're very stuck. They go, are you telling me that all this is happening under our noses? I'm sure we know about it. You can't go anywhere with that sort of mentality either, you see.
But then by the same token, they'll be mad at Edward Snowden or somebody who is showing you what's going on under your nose. And it's a betrayal. I liken it to Dottie Sandusky, the wife of Jerry Sandusky from Notre Dame, that horrible pederast.
I'm not sure who that is. But yeah.
He's his football coach. That was off at not Notre Dame. I forget, some Pennsylvania fucking potato person football school, but there's still people who think he's innocent. He was a horrible pederast, and he gets interviewed by Matt Lauer, who goes, "Are you sexually attracted to young boys?" Now, all you got to do is say no, dude. That is a real simple answer. You don't have nobody in your camp that's like, I know your love of nuance is going to make you not just say no, but you got to. And he goes, well, I like the company of children. No, that's guilty, asshole. If you can't go, ew, no, I should punch you in your mouth or something, then I don't believe you. So anyway, he had an adopted son who, it's rampant across the Western world. Let's face it, the West is just built on just horrific shit to kids for some reason that are beyond my understanding. But
it's the degeneration of the culture. I mean, I think it's the degeneration of the family, the degeneration of people who have felt like they're the underdogs for a long time. And it is very prevalent, as you say, and Britain has a lot of it. And in actual fact, it's quite common. And when you think, you start hearing about it and you go, oh my God, that's really, really disturbing.
Well, it depends on your level of satisfaction too. All my friends that are doing well, well, not all, like Tim Dillon does a great job in his show. I think he does a great job. And Tim picks up on stuff a lot of people don't notice at all. But so I just went back to New York last week and I was talking to a bunch of my friends, and most of them still don't know the crime of what happened during COVID at all. And not only that, they don't want to talk about it. They want to just move on. Even though it's like a Mengele level thing, probably a little worse because it was the whole world.
Yeah.
None of the things worked. The mask didn't help ever. And they all knew it. Everyone that has ever worked in medicine knew that. Okay. Some of them would tell you, some of them wouldn't, which I find shocking. Like, you would think anybody that took that oath would have some compunction to have to tell you that these things.
Doctors and people in the medical field are very, very programmed. And of course, they've just done anatomy and physiology. Then they get bought out and they work for drug companies.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, the hospitals and the doctors in the UK are appalling. Yeah, I mean, I've had relatives who've died, you know, close relative of mine went to the doctor, said, "Oh, I've got this pain in my chest, and my left side's going dead," which is, Google that, heart attack, right? They said, "Oh, it's probably a bit of indigestion." They were dead within a couple of hours. This happens a lot. So, you know, you can't trust authority to that respect. I think it's getting it balanced. It comes down to your personal responsibility about yourself. And Dr. Richard Day said that in his lecture in 1969, which we've covered in a show. It's called The Order of New Barbarians. I don't know whether you know about it, but it was a sort of off the cuff lecture, and he worked at Mount Sinai in New York, and he said, "Look, I'm going to tell you something about what's going to happen. Don't record it and don't make notes. But the thing is that we are running. We're at a running start, and nothing can stop us now. Everything he said has come true. Everything, even the minute things. You know, this is an example, right, of a tiny, minute thing. He said, contraceptives will be readily available. In fact, they will be staring you in the face in the supermarket. But they weren't in 1969. Right. Even in the 70s and 80s, they'd be under the counter. Like, you go and get your hair cut and be like, something for the weekend, sir. Yeah, right. Do you know what I mean? But now you've got it, and it's like all the different flavored ones are there when you go to the supermarket on the checkout. And how did you know a little thing like that? That's a minute thing, you know. But everything he said about the degeneration of society and health, because he worked for Planned Parenthood, and he was a Rockefeller insider. And
they're the best as Rockefellers, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they took over the health services quite effectively, and Dr. Richard Day in 1969 did this off-the-cuff lecture. Now, the reason it's so credible is because everything he said has come true.
Yeah, that's everything he said has come true.
And he said, some of you will think I'm talking about communism. What I'm talking about is much bigger than communism.
Yeah, Fabian
and he described exactly what's happened with the drugs coming in, the degeneration of people's minds. And he said, only those who look after themselves will survive.
Yeah, well, they want to, these are eugenics cult psychopaths, all of them at the top. They all think like what we have in America, especially now, and I'm in comedy, which is like the lowest rung of show business, really stand-up is.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not, I think stripping is probably the lowest.
No, porn stars are, they do comedy when they fail out of porn, they have to do comedy. This is the only thing stand-up comedy is above is pro wrestling, because it destroys your body. The same like drug abuse, the same pitfalls, but a lot more like man-on-man sexual abuse, and a lot more your body's destroyed. But and then stand-ups above that. Like, I would be considered what you call a failed stand-up just because I do stand-up for a living still. If I had become a movie star, I would be a successful stand-up. So, but I'm not saying it like bitterly. The part I like doing, the part I like doing.
It has to come from your heart, of what you're good at. This is really part of, I think, what we're talking about is you integrating yourself into the bigger picture of living.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, my stuff has been shut down for years, and I see people who come up after the COVID thing who have hundreds of thousands of people watching this garbage, right? And I think, and my friends say, look, the people who get what you do really appreciate, which they do. It has been shut down, but you can't be thinking in terms of I'm not successful enough, because you are successful at what you do. You're a good stand-up.
Right. I have no complaints. Like, I had a whole thing come down on me in like 2015, which is insane. People don't even remember now, but I've had the entire media try to ruin my fucking life. I've absolutely had that happen to me. So I know that, but I don't give a shit. Like, honestly, I kind of appreciate it because I don't give a shit. And now it makes me sad, especially down here, because Austin's kind of a small town. And I'm always like these young comics. I'm like, just have some goddamn self-esteem. Like, what do you do? If you think something's wrong off the bat, why'd you get into this if you're going to be a punk that goes along with authority, and authority within stand-up comedy is not authority. It's
no, the whole point of it goes back to the mountebank, the troubadour, the traveler who's going around educating people, shouting against authority, saying, "Hey, they're all wrong uns here," and blah, 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 and writing a funny song about it. You see, I think it's something that's in the blood that is a very vocational thing. And I think as you get older, you realize that. But I knew a lot of people in entertainment. I was in entertainment myself, mainly like rock bands and performing. And
well, UK is a small town, like everybody knows.
UK is a very small town, and I met a lot of people who had been like really big stars who were just like jobbing actors, And it's an interesting thing because people outside show business don't realize that if you're working, you're successful. So you've done a lot of gigs over the weekend. You're successful. You're working.
I just didn't want to have a day job that I didn't like.
Me too. That's why I got into it. I thought, oh God, I can't work for anybody. I can't do this. And then I thought,
I can when I like. So I like, stand-up's very different than writing on a show with people where you got to kind of be subsumed by their room. And if everybody's funny, then it's like actually kind of a pleasure to do that. I actually
of course, but that's not like a clocking on it in a factory.
Not at all. No, not at all. The last thing I did like that was Chris Rock he's remaking some movie called One More Round or something that had Mads Mikkelsen. So and Chris I think just likes to have a writer. So he just got writers out. They thought were good, and it was just like it was just fun the whole time. It was just fun, man. And it's because everybody's good at it, and it takes you out of yourself, so you have to think about your, even if you're doing stand up well, you can't be in your ego about it. You don't get to have your dignity. You gotta be the room, and absorb everybody into the room, and if you suck, then it's like the room's too hot, or the room, like you have to just think of it like that, or if you think of it in your own, on a certain ego term, I think it like sabotages you out of the gate. And it's a different, like people that are very funny at that I really like to watch. Like my favorite to tell of all time, probably David Tell. But Patrice was a friend of mine who, like, the people I kind of was copying off of was Patrice and Attell the most. But Attell like has no ego about, but he does. But his ego is, I'm not gonna have any joke that's not funny, and he takes all of his emotion and channels it into his writing. And it looks deceptively simple what he's doing, but he's very good at packing the most amount of imagery into the smallest amount of. So it's like really efficient, really funny with like the least amount of words, which is like to me the art.
I love that editing. Editing is so important. And making something as simple as you can. I mean, I think that's a really good point. That. People
it's the opposite of esoteric
bullshit. Too many words, but comedy. I mean, the best comedians can just do a one-liner, and it's just hilariously funny. And those are the guys I used to really like. And some of the one-liners that they told me, I always remember them because I always thought one-liners were good. We had in the UK the Barry Cryer. He used to write for all the TV shows. And I always admired those guys. I got to know them as well. And their skills, it's like you're saying, that when someone's got a skill, it's great to be around them. It's an inspiring thing. And so that's why I, like working in doing documentaries and films and the research, it's all part of the same thing. And even like performing. So it's like you get better it's like a rounded experience. I was talking to someone I used to be on the circuit with years ago, and he wrote this book called Pop Idol, IDLE. And he was saying that, he says, yeah, do you remember all those really crap venues we used to play for these agents? I said, yes. He said, well, the reason they sent us to those is because they wouldn't send a bad act there because they'd probably get killed. And you'd roll up at this place, there'd be bloody stools flying around and fights going off at 7 o'clock in the evening. You think, oh, not my God. And at the end of the night, they go, that was great,
Yeah.
But it's all about where you get good at what you do. And then it becomes it transcends to a different level, doesn't it? I mean, if you work with those sort of people, it's inspiring. I've known those sort of people in my life, and they inspire me.
Yeah, no, it really does. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why talking about this kind of stuff, I don't really have any credibility. So I don't care. The stuff I got to look at on Jimmy Dorshow, we've been covering and he finds actual news that we're talking about, which I wasn't aware of before I started working on the show. And it's brutal. It really is. Being up on current events, like actually up on it, is a very frustrating thing because most people don't know shit. The ones, it's either other weirdos like yourself, that know what you know, or it's people that are in power that they know, but they're perpetrating it. So
yes.
All that happens is like I'll watch people go off on these stupid fucking things. Like right now, what's the here's a great one in comedy, the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which for 25, so now I'm doing like 26 years. So I've never heard of this thing of don't play Saudi Arabia. Everybody I knew, if they got that corporate gig of Saudi Arabia, they did it. The Saudis are an ally of America. Now, not to say they're good or bad, but where is this coming from that suddenly they're like, how could you take that blood money? What? First of all, I don't know if you guys heard of Israel, but shut up about Saudi Arabia.
That's virtue signaling, isn't it? That's the do-gooder thing, because they're in some day job that's been, steady all their lives. They don't realize what gig means. God is great. I'm working. That's what it means. Right?
Well, it's a lot of crabs in a bucket kind of open mic bitterness too about it. It was just bizarre for this to come out because that Prince, from what I understand, that guy's probably liberated. He's been the most liberal leader of that country. If you're mad about women driving or whatever the fuck they're talking about, they're not mad about that. They're jealous that someone got a big payday to go do this show. So my first job was at Mark Maron, the first writing job I had. I always loved Mark. He's purely in Hollywood fucking retarded mode. It's fake. I know it's fake because I know the guy. He just interviewed Obama again. He goes, I'd like to think I wouldn't take that gig. You're not even going to say you wouldn't? You're going to go, I'd like to think I wouldn't? You would. You would take it, dude. What are you talking about? I know you.
Someone who's being disingenuous with their disingenuous persona,
and the thing is, Mark is such a funny dude. Like, when we hang out, he's such a funny dude with like a vicious sense of humor. And he's one of the early podcast adopters, okay? Him and Rogan. Rogan, the only guy that I know of who was right the entire time during COVID. None of the authorities. That shouldn't be. That's very strange. And Marin went back to like Netflix bullshit. Like he wanted to go to the prom. That was his whole thing, I guess.
Well, I think this is the thing. You see, this sorts out the wheat from the chaff because the people who want that corporate biscuit and will compromise and go. And I've seen that happen with a lot of people I knew actually in comedy because they got the TV jobs by they were angling to get a TV series, but some of the funniest people are still on the circuit, you see, because they like that idea of going out, am I going to die on my arse? Right. They'll take that extra risk. And that's what it's about. Because if it's not about that, it's not about anything.
Yeah, well, I got to have so when Jimmy Carr's here, I always like talking to Jimmy Carr. He's a pretty smart dude. But I know he was way wrong during the pandemic. I know he was.
Oh, yeah.
But he plays Rogan's Club, so he can't be like standing on it because there's a bunch of like branch Covidians that are like still think that Rogan was wrong. No, he wasn't wrong about a single thing. There's a lot of smart people I notice, and what happens is you get to be friends with people that are in places of power, and you go, well, they can't be a bad guy. I'm cool with them. So he told me he's friends with Camilla Parker Bowles, and I'm sure he is.
Well, do you know what Prince Charles said to her when he was going to propose?
Tampon thing? I brought it up to him immediately, if that's what you're going to say, about living as a tampon in her?
He said, marry me, Camilla, and I'll never look at another horse again.
That is true love to say that to your girl. That is like a thing that...
Definitely. It's a big thing for a royal to say.
Well, you know what blows my mind in the UK now is, because, am I wrong about this, that King Charles traces his lineage back to not only such luminaries as Dracula and King David of ancient Israel, but Muhammad himself. They claim
blood... wouldn't surprise me. I mean...
I don't believe him, but I think...
His auntie's buried in Tel Aviv, I think, just outside Tel Aviv. But
say that again?
This is an interesting point.
Oh, his aunt? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I think his Aunt Alice is buried in Israel, It's outside Tel Aviv somewhere. But it's interesting, actually, because what we're seeing now is the end of monarchy. So, in other words, the monarchy were useful up to a certain point, and I think his mother Elizabeth knew it was the end of the monarchy. But if you look at Prince Harry and Prince William, you know it's the end of the monarchy. right? You know it's the end. It can't go any further. It doesn't get any lower than that. Because aren't these people meant to be elite thinkers? Aren't they meant to be leaders of men and women around the world? And it's just like, what a pair of dorks, you know? And,
it's so funny to me that Harry takes, like, Prince Harry, I think, gets hammered worse than Andrew. Then Andrew is like, Andrew still gets bodyguards, right?
I mean, when he's such a bad liar, so he can't be a complete sociopath. Because when he said, well, there's a problem with that, you see, because I don't sweat. And there's all these pictures of him with huge bloody sweat marks under his arm. But why would you even say something so dumb as that?
First of all, it's not even huge. What do you pant like a dog? How would it even be possible?
I don't sweat.
It really is. Well, you know, the power structure lies down the pyramid at you, but the saving grace is, like every other thing, people are shitty and ambitious and lying their way up the pyramid. So the people at the top aren't getting good information. You know, they put in a surveillance state and they still don't get good information somehow.
That's what I meant by what we have to be careful when we talk and use the word elite, you see. When we use the word elite, we have to be careful not to misapply it to these people.
Well, it just means chosen. I mean, somebody chose them. I didn't, but.
well, they weren't chosen by us. But the point is that, in a way, I do admire elite thinkers, you see.
Yeah, of course, but they're not inconvenient.
That's the point, and I think the whole thing comes down to being able to have an argument about something. I mean, I think the art of debating and being able to hold your own with people is really, really good, because I jumped out of school, you know, with basically nothing, and I kind of educated myself, but I can hold my own with people who've had an elite education. And it's a great thing because it opens up to you and makes it clear that these people who have come through so-called elite institutions aren't necessarily very bright at all, of course. And
just being literate. I mean, everybody, I got along so good. I really do miss those guys, Sasha Cohen's friends, and that they're his two buddies from Oxford, and I got along with them great because I read a lot. So, you know, there's a certain kind of like, I don't know, describe it, like smart ass. You could use your intellect for something better than making these jerk off jokes, but you didn't. That kind of person I get along with very well. But it really is a matter of being literate. And I have friends. I was producing this show here for my friend Chloe called News for Women. She made it up. It's really funny. It's based on a real thing that was called The Skim. And it was, they skim the news because women are too busy to read. So they would just skim the news for them. I mean, it sounds like a parody. And she thought it was funny. So she made this thing, news. It's like news so that women can get it. She's like, her family's like old ass money from, it's actually like gothic horror where her family comes from in Louisiana, New Orleans. She has like some great aunt that, it's a famous house down there where after the husband died, this aunt tricked the mistress. Okay, imagine still being mad at the mistress after the husband's dead, and had her chained up in the attic and just starved her to death. And she would just be sitting in downstairs with this woman, and the body wasn't found until after she died. So she just let a person starve to death in her attic and left her up there. That's some ritual thing to me. That's a dark. I never even heard of something so dark. But this is it's American old money families. But anyway, Chloe's been to rehab 9 times. She's kind of a fuck up in her family. But guess what? Any reference I have that's a little obscure, she knows it. She's read every very well read. Even the ones that are like the fuck up in their family have read a lot, or they went to like a good school and just learned, basic shit.
I found the so-called aristocracy in Britain, generally potless, are usually extremely damaged, not just by the education system, but by what their parents put them through, and that's on a normal level. I mean,
it gets real dark. That the things I might can't even say them on here, but things I know about real famous people that are like, holy shit, that's fucking crazy. Like, and the people telling you, I don't know. I've hung out with a lot of rich kids, I guess, in my life, just by virtue of being entertainment. And what's funny is if you've been going to therapy since you were 5, as if it was church confession, okay?
You've got no chance. Yeah.
And you've been on fucking Lexapro, whatever the fuck they put you on, Buddhism pills to be cool with how unnatural this is, because you're growing up in a household where it's like you know, they have as many kids as a poor family because they're doing a eugenics thing. And the bizarre things you hear that are normal for these people, and they don't understand how fucked up it is what they're telling you. Like, they don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, I've known a lot of those sort of people, and people who were the offspring of very famous people in music business, and the weirdness of their lives.
A lot of incest.
It's very attractive in a way because they've had interesting lives. So they can relate to a lot more stuff usually. But of course, there's often a lot of damage there. But yes, nothing is as clean cut as people like to think. And
that's right.
I think that's the key point you're trying to make. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just amazing to me when you hear like, oh, so when I was in art school back in the day, there's Art Institute of Philadelphia, and a bunch of kids were from Philly or from Pennsylvania and Delaware. And they had all worked, they had parents that worked for like the DuPont family, like at their gathering. So that was like folklore of how inbred and mutated DuPonts were. Like, I used to hear the craziest stories about people working DuPont gatherings of like these inbred, like something out of 30 Rock, you know, when Paul Rubens was that inbred prince. It really is like a, you know, parts of it are comical, but that's when you see like there's something where somebody thinks because they got a lot of money and they've been scioned in to the royal bloodline or whatever the fuck they try to do, they start to believe they're a different race than you. And that's what I was like trying to find out.
Well, I brought up into it, Kurt. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it starts at Oxford University or, you know, or 5 years old, that they are being pushed into a situation where they're taught that they're the creme de la creme and that they will be the future leaders.
Yeah,
so there's
or
a sense
the serpent
of entitlement
race
and expectation there, which also makes it interesting with the people who fail, because the failed aristocrats who are down at heel, I used to know loads of those in London, and they're hilarious people. And there was one who lived on this really rough estate in Islington where you could probably get stabbed very, very easily, you know, after being there 5 minutes. And this fellow would invite us all over, and he'd put on this massive meal, and he'd put on his bow tie, and outside it's like a war zone. There's literally people shooting up in the alleyways, but of course, have you got a serviette, Mark? Oh God, Oggy, can you get Mark a serviette, please? You know.
Yeah, well, that's like holding on to
it's a kind of insanity, but at all costs, keeping up appearances, and keeping this sense of decency among this part. I mean, I won't go into the story, but it's hilarious. I'll talk to you about it one day. But the people who used to hang around there, like the drummer who had played with Richie Blackmore years ago and hated him, and he had half his face was paralyzed. He was a recovering heroin addict who needed a liver transplant, you know.
Oh, God.
And these were the sort of people who this aristocrat had around him. But it was all about decency and being. And he just lived in this.
It's like the band on the Titanic, and they're like, "We're going to play all the way down."
That's right. But there's something I like about that. There's something I really liked about it.
No, it is appealing. Well, because it's someone adhering to a principle. That's the thing. Like, I don't know. I just have certain principles. I don't even think I'm so good at all. I just like certain things are just like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I thought everybody felt like that. We use that a principle. Like, no, I'm not going to like.
Well, isn't it a shock when you find out that they don't for the first time, you know?
No, the only principle is whatever helps you, sucking up the power to get ahead, whatever you have to do. And it's mind-blowing to watch it. So I could see how being in a goddamn nightmare war zone and there's one guy keeping up appearances, how comforting that might feel to me, you know, if I was in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's a peculiar thing about the British, which is very isolationist. And I've known a lot of these aristocrats. They're living in falling down houses. They might be property rich, but they're definitely cash poor. And they're still talking about Britain the same way that people did in the 17th and 18th century. And you try and bring them up to date and they really won't have it.
Yeah, well, you know, that De Vere guy, you brought up De Vere, maybe wrote those Shakespeare plays. So the De Vere family are Anjou or some shit. And, you know, they call themselves dragon people and all. So that guy, I don't know if you read Tracy Twyman's research. I've been on a real kick reading all her shit. But
I looked at that a while ago, but I'm not overly familiar.
It's unreal what she did. She got. I explained in the last one, but anyway, she objectively, with no preconceived notions, was like, okay, I'm just going to look into this stuff, and she started going on a Ouija board, and I can't remember the part of France she was in, where they're trying to contact a guy named John Cocteau, who was some Templar.
Well, Jean Cocteau was a French playwright, wasn't he? And
yeah, and so he could only. It was like at Bash Cipher they were being communicated with. Then he goes, you got to talk to Kane. So then they're talking to Bible Kane, supposedly. Then they start getting dreams to build a better Ouija board, which they did do. As she's describing this dryly, it's like a horror movie. Like, oh my God, did you do that? Yeah, she did it.
Yeah, the thing with all that is that the things that come through Ouija boards pretty much always lie about who they are.
Oh no, this is what's wild, dude. She's completely, and so like some of the stuff, she's completely objective about it. But the thing that's crazy is she's being objective about it while doing things. So that at one point they set up a secret society where people are sending them samples of their blood, like blood, signing in blood on things because Baphomet told them to do that. It was all curiosity. Later she goes, I'm not doing this anymore. And she explains it. She goes, well, you're like, well, I'm learning things, whatever, but they're liars. The things that she got from this are fascinating, okay? Of course, a lot of them are lies. It's like a Nigerian print scam. I just look at that as the internet before the internet. You know who the fuck you're talking to.
Yeah.
You get catfished. However, because she's smart, the things that she picked up on are like things I've never heard before, especially how the different entities would communicate. Because she had made this new Ouija board that was like a circle instead of the traditional way because it was easier to get. That's how they told her to design it. It reminded me of the AI designing a better program for you or something. And one of them, the one would communicate only from side to side motion, and there's one that would go in circles. At one point, she said she realized, I don't know if it was Cain. Oh, so supposedly, this whoever's saying they're Cain was describing Atlantis, where he was like a king or something. And it was, how do you describe it? It sounded like Lord of the Rings, what he was describing. And not only that, he was undead, and undeath was a kind of coma. Like he wasn't, basically he told me that God kept him alive with a little bit of gum, which is an old Sumerian thing for blood or something. It was so crazy, the things that I heard from this that she's getting, and the things that would pique your curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Then he goes, you got to ask Baphomet, refer to you. So Baphomet sounds like almost like a mishmash egregore that the Templars made a long time ago.
It was kind of assigned to them because they were said to originally worship the head of John the Baptist.
Well, they would they used it as a Ouija board. That's what they're using, that head. And they had these skulls all over the place. I've also heard correlated something with these crosses they could communicate. When you're talking about communicating over distances with those, I'm blanking on the name. You said up top, what the hell are they called? Hold on, it's written down here. Dolmens.
But they were more like places that people would congregate. The elite priest would congregate. But I think the seance thing and all that Ouija board stuff, I did try it when I was younger and stuff got a bit out of hand. But the thing that I would say about that is don't do it at home.
Yeah, who would do that?
You are inviting. You see, the thing is, when powerful entities come through, they can take possession of the person. It's a very dangerous thing to do if you open yourself up to any of this stuff, in my opinion, which is really what I think the Essenes were saying that, the Nag Hammadi texts refer to this a lot as the archons, but the archons means leaders or rulers, but it's also about this omnipresent thing going on, the light and the darkness. And there is a tendency for people who were born into the aristocracy to get into the occult. Where do you think those Hammer films came from? It was always in a mansion. The devil rides out, I haven't seen Simon for months. And he'd be sacrificing the black cock in the attic and all that. And then the next thing is that Baphomet, the devil appears, and then they're on a wild goose chase to save him, But this was actually based on some kind of reality because a lot of those people were rather insane. And they made themselves further insane by getting into the occult. And I think
Christopher Lee said it. Christopher Lee said you're going to go nuts if you get into that shit.
Yes.
Because people thought he had some occult library. He's like, I don't. And he goes, if you get into that, you will lose your sanity, your soul. He says it's a clip you can find easily.
Yes, I've seen it.
Oh, the reason I brought up her, Tracy Twyman. So at the point when she's talking to the Baphomet, this weird hermaphrodite, who's probably Kybel and some other shit mashed together. I think it's almost like corporations, these fucking entities. It was telling her she was supposed to help this DeVere guy, the surviving DeVere, who was trying to put his book out. Okay, and you can find videos of him talking about the DeVere family line on the internet, and he's going on about martial vampirism versus the kind they would do, and this and that. And I had this guy, I'm forgetting his last name, Chris, on a couple episodes ago, who knew all these people. This DeVere guy was a loser and a drug addict. I think he died homeless, but he was of that royal blood. Chris Knowles. Chris Knowles, really interesting, really fucking interesting guy. And even Tracy Twyman, who was saying, Chris Knowles was like warning her not to get, she was very curious, okay? And she'd say, like, atheists won't try the Ouija board with you because they don't believe in that shit, right? But they also don't want to mess with it. And also, religious people are like, I'm not going to do that, so no one will do it to see what happens. No one will do it. So she just did it. And when you listen to her talk about it, it's fascinating and horrifying because you're like, at no point, as you might expect, like, you know, I've accepted Christ probably 17 times in the first quarter of fiscal year 2024 alone. Like, the first sign of trouble, I would, if I was messing around with that stuff, I would immediately be like, oh, Jesus, help me. Like, I wouldn't even have any
because the Holy Spirit does work. I mean, I think that this brings in an interesting point about governing systems. The demonic realm has a governing system.
Very legalistic, yes.
Yeah.
To the letter. In fact,
and the retribution and the way that the entities entrap you has to be through your own consent, which is where it's very similar to elements of the legal system with the blood, the birth certificate, the giving away of the child to the state. It's a very similar thing. It's like a pact. It's a blood oath. So you need to take a blood oath. And you mentioned that earlier on about blood.
I wasn't allowed to do that.
The life force of the being. And of course, in a lot of voodoo type cultures, I'm saying voodoo type, you know, which is that's a mixture of black magic and Catholicism. But these sort of cults, they depend on being able to control you through the blood and, more importantly, psychologically.
That's how they get rights. That's the thing I find the most fascinating. The almost like banal kind of adherence to the letter of the law. Like, these things are two-dimensional. Like,
they work through a system. They work in a hierarchical system. And that is all you need to know. Because the truly powerful ones will not come through. But once you've seen spiritual possession, you will never unsee it. It does happen.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Give me 1 sec. Hold on. I'll be right back. But I want to ask about that. Hold on 1 sec.
Okay. So while Kurt's gone, I'll carry on for a little while. We've been covering the ancient history of Britain in a series called Shattered Isles. And that has been one of the main focuses of the shows that we've been doing over the past couple of years for anyone who's recently come to the channel. But do go back further and have a look at the things that we were doing 10 years ago, because it really helps with understanding the governance system. And I think that once people get this, it really makes a difference. And even with the so-called demonic realms, the idea of how people are controlled is through systems, and the system that we've been talking about just now is just another system. And once I started looking into this, I started talking to a fellow called Jerry Marzinski. I just thought I'd fill in while you were away.
No, it's great that you did, dude. I had to pee so bad, I was gonna fucking explode.
I was talking about Jerry Marzinski. And
wait, who's that? I know that name.
Yeah, he's a psychiatric practitioner. I got in touch with him in 2015 because I knew somebody who was under very dark spiritual entities and had been taken over with possession, which manifested itself as psychosis, gaslighting, and extreme behavior. And he was the only person in the world that I knew had talked about it, because I'd heard him on a podcast in 2010, and he'd seen this manifesting in some paranoid schizophrenics. The voices they were hearing were not random hallucinations. They were the voices were controlling them, but the voices could actually get them in and out of trouble because the voices were supernatural. But what would generally happen is the person would come under the control, they'd be tricked under the control of the demon, and then the demon would just use them and torture them for their own ends. And I know people it's happened to. A friend of mine I knew since she was 17, she had, you've got to believe, and you've got to believe you can get rid of it. because she got some entity attached to some entity that took her over when she moved into a new flat, but she must have been open to it, the new apartment, you know.
He was probably meditating too long. Like I have a friend that does that. Just leaves the car unlocked, meditating too long, and you got filled with parasites from the goddamn astral plane.
Yeah, well, it's a very true thing, but I think it's like how you construct your awareness. I mean, this passive awareness that the Western esoteric schools seem to teach is really a programming device, because what you're doing is you're leaving yourself open. You don't need to do that. You can be completely aware but defended. And if you have that awareness, which is just pure awareness, you can go into altered states, you can do all that stuff, but also you'll see them coming in. I did a course on it about 20 years ago with some people in Brazil and Portugal, and they were studying consciousness. And the things that we did were absolutely amazing, because clairvoyance increased, the ability to read minds. This is all going back to what the Druids and people knew 2,000 years ago. This is what they're trying to take us away from. But the danger is with the new age that people get sucked into the Ouija board. They get sucked into thinking they've had all these past lives. You know, like Shirley MacLaine used to think, well, I'm Cleopatra. She couldn't be the cleaner in the local school or something. Do you know what I mean?
You know,
they always
I
have
used
to
play
be
this
some
game
elevated thing.
I used to play this PlayStation Spider-Man game, and I was Spider-Man in the game, you know, but we all bought, a lot of people could buy that game. If you're tapping into that, you know, like, yeah, to some degree you probably were, but a lot of people were, you know, these are like famous characters that, you know, you're just tapping into the record.
It's a form of biorobotization, isn't it? The computer game and the simulation world is a form of biorobotization. In other words,
they called it that here in America. That's what Kissinger called that shit. He called it programmable. Wait, what is it? Biorobotoids or something was the term for MK Ultra programming when they were doing Operation. I don't know. They got all these stupid names, but if you read Bryce Taylor's book, Thanks for the Memories, all about how Bob Hope was their controller, and I gotta say, I believe it 100% because go watch Bob Hope and you tell me why anyone's laughing at anything he's saying. It makes no sense. And he's all at the USO. He's one of them golf club guys.
The only thing you can say in defense of that is those were simpler and more naive times. But I get your point. Yeah,
I think they're doing that Egyptian crowd control. I think he had a golf club and he's got a hypnotic cue. And there's a thing, laugh now. And you're already a military man, so you follow orders, right? Mm-hmm. The sitcom, they have those signs that tell you when to laugh and applaud. Mm-hmm. And all the shows I worked on, if you know the warm up guy goes, "We need you to laugh really loud, like it's funny if it's not funny." You know, like hypnosis is like really just like, I just got to get you to say yes. It's really like improv or something. Like, yes,
improv actually means that you're creating it, though, doesn't it? Whereas this is more like you're the passive recipient. So
yeah,
in other words,
that power.
It's like when the COVID times in the UK, I was really dismayed. There's a friend of mine who's in a famous 60s band. And they were at this holiday camp. We'd done these gigs in January at this terrible place at the end of a beach, you know. And he says, "Oh yeah, well me and the missus go out and we bang the pots every night." They had this thing where you bang your pans every night for the NHS, who were actually killing people.
Oh, that's right. That was a thing in New York. People.
I was so shocked when I heard this that all of the respect I had for this person just went out the window. But that's biorobotization, you see. It's basically like going to a protest and going, whose streets? Our streets. Here's your sign. Go and protest. Then you give us your sign back. So you get the two. It's like in Britain, you get the so-called far right and the far left, and they meet in the middle of Whitehall. And it's like a tradition that's been going on 10 years. So Tommy Robinson will lead the so-called far right, who are basically the Zionist lobby who are running the government.
I love that. Either way, Zionists run the...
And then, of course, they're running the pro-Palestine thing as well. I knew that years ago.
Well, I like in England now, you're not allowed to, you know, because we're covering stories of all the people getting arrested for tweets in the UK.
Oh, it's horrendous, Kurt. It's really horrendous. Yeah.
Well, then I saw a story where a guy gets arrested for tweeting F Hamas. I'm like, oh, you're not allowed to trash either side. You have to just shut up. That's like the law.
Well, there's a great photograph recently of someone who broke out of that mold, and he had a big sign up saying, "Tommy Robinson is a Mossad asset." And he had a T-shirt. He had a T-shirt with Plasticine Action, because, as you may know, the group Palestine Action, which was a construct, it's another globalist construct, Palestine Action. In other words, we'll ferry them all into that, rather than support Palestine, you have to say Palestine action, then all these old virtue signalers of 80 years old are getting arrested and blind people are getting arrested. That's a form of biorobotization. But what happens is you get the two lies meeting each other in Whitehall. And I was down there one day, and there was a cop there, and I said, "What's happening?" He goes, "Oh, Tommy Robinson's lot are coming in from there, and the Antifa lot are coming in from here. We stand in the middle. They both have their say, and then they all go home." I said, "Oh, same as normal then." He said, "Yeah."
It's like the cartoon with the dog and the wolf like punching in. "Hello, Bert. Hello." You know, like the old Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
The sheepdog and the coyote come in and punch cards and say hello to each other, and then go chase the thing. It's exactly that, and it. Yeah. You know, it reminds me of when years ago I went to ECW wrestling in Philly, and this is before they came out and admitted it was scripted. You know, Vince McMahon broke kayfabe, as they call it. Yeah. And I remember, so I'm like 19, and I mean, I knew it was. I don't know what degree it was fake, but you know, I was an adult at that point enough to know. But I remember seeing these two rivals, the Sandman and Raven, getting into a van together out back and I'm like, you know what? I'll bet Raven didn't kidnap that guy's son. He kidnapped his son. Well, they have to take a bus back together.
I think it's the WEF, isn't it? I'm a bit out of date.
Now it is. The WEF.
Really, that came from the circus. So in a way, it came from a really good place, because in Britain, they used to have this wrestling in the 60s and 70s. And my granddad used to watch it. And it was hilarious. These completely unfit, fat blokes going, and it's so staged, it was ridiculous. Yeah. And there was a one called Big Daddy, and he was a huge, overweight, obese man who couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, probably, right. You know? And then he'd be throwing him around the ring. But that's where it all came from. It came from the circus. These people were like circus acts. And I actually used to work with them, the tail end of it. And I was at this stadium one day in Mile End, and this fella turns up, and he calls himself Dave Flame, the hilarious barbarian, and the lovely Patricia. And he dressed up as a Native American Indian. And he's a big fat bloke, completely chain smoking. And he comes out and goes, "Here, Mark, get them kids away from the front of the van. I'm going to breathe fire." So he goes out. He's gone out and done this. I'm backstage, so I'm comparing it. He comes back. The headdress is completely burnt off, and he's got no eyebrows. I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Fucking wind changed direction. I got a blowback." he goes, "Anyway, announce me again, because I'm going to throw knives at the wife." I'm going to throw knives at the wife. Just brilliant, you know what I mean? And it came from the circus, which I was always, maybe you were attracted to that as well, because I think performance, if you're getting a performance, you always love those kinds of things, because it's like where it came from.
Well, I like a performance that I could get into, even if it's a thing I'm not into. So when I wasn't a big wrestler, but my friends were into it, and we went to ECW, you're up close to the ring. And this guy knew, it was like bring your own weapons night. So we brought like a baking tray and a stop sign. And New Jack, the wrestler, used it to hit somebody. That was like that. Yeah. But you're being drawn into, it was almost, I remember at the time, I was like, it was probably like the same energy as a lynch mob, but no one was dying, so it was like positive, you know. Yes. The whole crowd, you get way into it. That's like what magic. I mean, that's what occult is. That's what that creep LeVay was all about. Was dividing the world into carnies and rubes.
Well, that's twisted stuff. I mean, we're talking about something very innocent here, really. I mean,
well, that's the snake in Eden every time. There's something's good, then the subtlest of all the creatures has to come in and say some bullshit and then ruin it. I mean, it's like a repeating theme. So, in fact, I learned from your website first. Something unrelated. I'm watching John Lear, Roger Lear, the alien guy, the new Bob Lazar. And he goes, and I'm watching some interview with him. He's old as shit. And he goes, he saw these crazy things that I want to hear something crazy. Honestly, I don't want to be bored. So that's why I love when you're making fun of allegory and shit and these stupid fucking orders. Like, more allegory.
Oh, yeah, it's just to draw people in. It's energy harvesting, yeah.
And you could feel it. I could feel the energy drain out of me the second I'm not hearing a simple, truth being said. You could feel it, the drainingness of it, you know? But anyway, he goes, there's 40 planets in the solar system. I looked it up, and you technically could say that, but okay. The surface of the moon, if you're on it, the sky looks yellow. He's going to say crazy shit. And he goes, no, we can't go explore. The whole solar system is under, how do you put it? It's like under the rule of the serpent race. No, I never heard of that shit. The serpent. Like, what the fuck's a serpent race?
Well, it's pulling stuff out. I mean, the thing is that he doesn't know that, of course, but it draws people in as a story.
Okay, but it drew me in, and then the serpent race. I'm like, well, that's not the
no, it's much more
reptilians
practical than that because it's on Earth.
But then I look it up, and no, yeah, we are ruled by the serpent race. That's those sons of Cain dipshits. The people that think
the sons of Cain. Yeah,
they think that you're the line of Seth and they're the line of Cain. And they call it the serpent race because somehow the serpent got Eve. Now, actually, in occult rituals, it could be some Moonchild situation where even though Adam's the one doing the pushing, the Nahash is the one. Like, if you watch this guy Nathan Reynolds, while I don't know where he is now. He's like off the grid, but this dude's story is crazy. And I got to tell you, he's given me so many good loose threads to pull that I consider all his crazy things he said, which are crazy as hell. Things that like. I have to consider the possibility of dragons being real now. I don't know if I'm prepared for that. But anyway,
yeah.
He said these people that do this shit that go back, way back with their cult lines. And a lot of them in America, because, America is the land of the plumed serpent, Amaru, that Peruvian god. That's where we got that. Amerigo Vespucci changed his name to match that shit. It's not named after some random guy. It's after Amaru. Okay, and early like Joseph Smith types that came here, these like warlock charlatans. Well, they're all like treasure hunt. Remember the treasure hunting fads of going back to John D, where we need to go back to that system where the banks are buried treasure. And anyway, his Reynolds is the Reynolds rap family, not the tobacco, even though they're connected. But his grandfather or his great grandfather built the new torch for the Statue of Liberty, which is that Mithra initiation. It's a dude in drag is what that is, by the way. And his family, his background's horrible, or how he describes it. And Lake Havasu, which, like the city of London, is one of those. In fact, I think they say they're under the authority of the city of London or some shit, and they have like a red dragon.
It is. They've got the red dragon and the silver dragon, silver or white dragon, and they're like two opposites of the same side in a way. But it goes back to mythology. The city of London is one of the most
the other one.
Interesting place. If you ever go UK again, just go and walk around the city of London for a day. It's absolutely amazing.
I didn't know when I was there that was a thing. I found this out way later. It was 2011. I was in England, but I would like to go check it out because the original Mithras temple that. From Roman times?
Oh yeah, that's there. That's
Michael Bloomberg's rebuilding it. Michael Bloomberg from here.
Yes, he bought well, they're obsessed with this stuff, but in a way, as I said, they're fake elites. They're not that interesting. But the city of London and the occult symbolism there is really fascinating.
Yeah,
and it goes back to there's the bees, the Merovingian bees, and all these different associations and societies, and of course all of the trading companies were there. At sixes and sevens was the grocers, I think, and the haberdashers.
Wait, the trading companies, like, do you mean like Dutch East India Company, that kind of thing?
Yes. This is basically what the City of London is all about, and these associations. It is one of the most secretive places on the planet. But if you walk to the old parts of it, I did a show, several shows, and a feature documentary called The Heretics of London, the Smithfield Martyrs, because in Smithfield, this is where the Protestant reformers and one Catholic were burnt at the stake, but it had been used for sacrifice for a very long time. So the history of that place within the Smithfield and the St. Paul's, of course, St. Paul's was where Occupy London Stock Exchange was, and that gave me a huge insight into the way the city was run, the haberdashers, the different companies that run. Also, there's 25 wards with 25 aldermen who run the city of London. It's running in a way which is so old-fashioned. It goes back, of course, to about the 1200s when it was incorporated, but it was never actually officially incorporated. It was just said to be incorporated. Oh. And we could do a show on that one night, because that is the most interesting place you could possibly go for history.
Yeah, it's real dark shit. And Lake Havasu, the London Bridge is there. Now, according to Nathan, the guy that brought it in is the guy, by the way, designed Disneyland, that occult creep. And Lake Havasu, according to Nathan, is it looks like retirees go with their grandkids, but they actually have sex tourism for children there mostly. It's run by the Knights of Columbus and something else. Mm-hmm. And his that London Bridge, I guess, he said London Bridge is falling down is about how they used to do immurement, where they bury you alive in the bridge. So when they were transporting it over, they found kids' toys and shit. I don't know what years they were burying people alive in that bridge, but this guy wanted it because it was so negatively charged an object. That's why he wanted it. And according to Nathan,
that's not a good thing to have, really, if you know anything about energy.
Say that again?
I mean, any object that's been imbued with some kind of trauma or bad energy, if you want, is not good to have around you anyway. So that's a complete ignorance of how things work, because objects, the psychometry, the study of these objects, I've been into it for years, and I've had some things that have come into my possession that have caused absolute havoc. We did a show with Stephen and Evan Strong in Australia about that. The livery. I
saw that. That's why I was bringing it up, because
the rings, yes. Okay,
so I didn't know at the time. I saw that episode, and then later I'm watching Gary Wayne talk about the Lord of the Rings guy. I'm forgetting his name like an idiot, but the author of Lord of the Rings, yes. Tolkien. Tolkien's one of those old bloodlines names, the Tolks, and he. That's an Atlantis overlay. It's like a metaphorical overlay for Atlantis. In fact, half of these wackadoo religions, like Mormonism, that is a metaphorical overlay for some Atlantis shit. They retell this Atlantis thing over and over, and I'm sure you could call it a bunch of names, but the thing of having this world governance, and the one before the Tower of Babel ruined it for them, and that's the thing that Twitter and all these things reminded me of the most, was the Tower of Babel, where the thing that's going to connect us all, suddenly nobody can understand each other anymore, the meaning of words. It just reminds me so much of that. And it feels like they've been trying to conquer that problem for a long time, of how do we get everybody connected again? Maybe it's a brain chip, or, that they don't need a chip no more.
I think that is it's a kind of superficial way that they've looked at it, which isn't going to work. You see, Whereas a more sophisticated system of governance would be looking at a much more wider view and a much more independent view as far as the person goes. In other words, that people can be trusted to a certain extent. You don't need to micromanage everyone's life. That is a sign of a civilization that's coming to an end. Whenever overt control is put into place, it means that the people who are running it are incompetent.
Let's say, Israel's not working out. And by the way, I'm prejudiced against Arabs. I want to make it clear that I'm a good person who's prejudiced naturally against Muslims, like all good people. I would never listen to them about what's going on. Jews are telling me, I learned the truth about it from Jews that don't like it. And the ones that do like it, who just brag openly about the craziest shit I've ever seen, I learned from them. So that's fallen apart. I mean, it's fallen apart in a way that I've never seen.
Just the 3 A's, audacity, audacity, and audacity, will no longer work after a certain point. And I think that's the interesting thing about that governing system of Zionism, which was created by the British through, of course, the Zionist conferences.
Yeah, soft power.
Britain was hand in hand with all that. And of course, British mandatory Palestine. Then we had the terror groups. So the Irgun and the Haganah formed the IDF, along with the Lehi, which were the most extreme, which was Abraham Stern's lot. But if you look at what's happening in Palestine now, what the Stern gang were doing was nothing.
Oh, yeah. It's like 13 Hiroshima bombs or something that they've...
It's unbelievable that, that could even happen under the noses of the Western world, but not believable when you know what the outcomes have been so far, because this sort of democratization process, as they call it, has failed every time. Why don't they get it through their thick heads that doesn't work?
Well, I think the goal is to kill these people and take all their shit, and that's why.
Yes, they want the gold, the resources, the oil, basically.
There's $2 trillion worth of natural gas under there.
That's
$2 trillion.
And the gas,
And Syria had to go, decided to go because our pipeline, and we blew up that pipeline to Germany. America blew that up, and then said Russia blew up their own pipeline. I remember, it was insane. By the way, the largest amount of greenhouse gases in human history, recorded human history, ever man-made, was the blowing up the what's the pipeline called? I keep mixing up with the one over
Nord Stream.
Nord Stream 2. Blowing up Nord Stream 2, that natural gas going in the air was the worst catastrophe. If you believe in climate change, that's the worst catastrophe.
Don't, you see. They don't. They want you to believe in it so that they can take your stuff and you will be basically an unsecured tenant on the land.
Finally,
once you take ownership away and once you restrict the resources. I went to an energy conference about 7 years ago in the UK, and they were the people who run the national grid when it's at peak capacity, which is at pretty much 90% of the time. And both of those companies told me separately, the managing directors, I actually put a show out. It's called The Green Energy Agenda Explained. You can look it up. They are talking openly and saying, we are charging the government top money for the electricity. We're making a lot of money. What we don't understand is why the government is lying about renewables. Well, we know now why they're lying about renewables, but also what they were saying was the future is power cuts. How do you get people to believe that electricity is a resource which is finite and which is really expensive and a luxury?
Same way they did with oil?
You give them power cuts.
Yeah. Because the oil thing, now that it's an old
and diesel. By the way, Kurt, just an addendum. They told me also that what is powering Britain are diesel and gas generators buried underground. So the windmills aren't really doing anything. So
they're killing whales. They do something. They cause whale suicide. The tone is so
they have to be dug up after 20 years because they're bloody useless. Yeah.
It's just like once. When I saw so a guy fills in for Jimmy, this guy Craig Pasta, he goes by the name Pasta, but I've talked to a lot of interesting people because of him. And I remember dismissing this immediately when he told me. He goes, "Yeah, I've been hearing things that oil is not really a finite resource. Like, it's the second most plentiful resource besides water."
Yeah.
And then I'm watching Colonel Prouty, the guy that from the 70s. You find his videos; they're great. Prouty. He's the guy. Here, wait. Let me get you the exact.
Their trade is treachery.
PROWTY. He has a whole thing about when they started saying oil was scarce, and he was around when they weren't saying that, and that's when they came up with fossil fuel and the Sinclair dinosaur to make you think that the fuel's from dinosaurs because it's so rare.
That's right. It's a fossil fuel. It's actually news just in. It's not, because
it's just carbon.
Russians have been finding abiotic oil because Russia's got loads of oil.
Yeah,
and they found out that abiotic oil was really quite much nearer the surface than they thought. That how can this happen? Because it's a naturally occurring substance within the earth. It's not fossils.
That's right. And so then it dawned on me because I thought that was a little far fetched, but then I remember De Beers, but mostly Sir Cecil Rhodes, but the thing where they pretend diamonds are scarce and they're not, that we've all heard that story. Every good liberal has heard the story of how diamonds are not actually rare, but the De Beers company hoarded them. They're not the ones in charge of that now, but at the time, they drove the price up by hoarding it. And I go, okay, well, we're talking about Rockefeller. All these guys are, energy is also national defense. So automatically you get to do all kinds of fuckery automatically just because of that. And of course, if I run it, I'm going to make it scarce on purpose. Why would I not do that? So now I find it very believable.
That's why they put meters on things. I mean, it's no good if you can't charge for it. And now they're at the extreme end of that, where they want you living in absolute poverty. I was in Nepal in 2016 after the earthquake, and there was no electricity for 20 hours a day sometimes. And you just get used to it. Most people had generators. There's hardly any solar there. But it puts things into perspective, you see. I mean, I think in the West, we have had it too easy for too long. Hardship is a very good thing for improving your resilience in the proper way and also for learning. Because if people are monged out in front of computers and just talking about the news cycle, you get what we have today, which is lazy-brained crap that's being copied everywhere, no innovation, and no one seems to be able to do anything or want to do anything. The skills are disappearing, which means the civilization's coming to an end. So the skills that we have, we should be using and focusing and really enjoying what we're doing, because the only way forward for a civilization is for it to develop and to expand the minds of the people. You can't do it by restricting the minds of the people. That's never worked in history.
No, you can censor your way out of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's what's happening in Britain at the moment, you see, because like the police are knocking on the door. But in a way, this is the problem with public officials, because they're going along with it. I don't think 20 years ago a copper would turn up on your doorstep in the UK and said, "You said something nasty about someone on Facebook."
New badge. Yeah, no,
they would just, a
lot of Blairites for a long time. We covered that Keir Starmer announcing. I can't remember the conference he's at, but the conference, long story short, was to combat populism. Okay. AKA the mysterious force, I bet.
The rise of populism, as if it's a bad thing. That just means that's what people want,
It sounds like a video on the mysterious force. It sounds like when people say about Christ, oh, it's Caesar's Messiah. I don't believe in any of that Caesar's Messiah shit. No. I think that mysterious force thing, it's populism. What scares elites the most? All the people putting aside their petty shit because they realize they're getting screwed by these people on top.
Yes.
And that could spread like wildfire. And that could account for the spread of Christ early on. I'll bet you that could account for trying to appropriate
the original Christians were very radical in their belief system. And it was a belief system which took a lot of inner resolve. So also the thing is now that the inner resolve is what's important.
Right.
The force they fear is a real thing. Because if you have inner resolve and you have knowledge, then you have power.
Yeah, no, it's the best. You don't have to kill nobody. You literally,
and it's a natural occurring power. It's not a power over other people. It's a power within you.
Because the thing falls apart if you're not all doing it.
Parasites don't want, because parasites don't like people with integrity.
No, it's a problem. It's a problem to the thing I'm trying to build here. And why do you go to good schools and why do you have good breeding? To learn how to turn a blind eye. Like in The Madness of King George. You ever see that movie? Where the guy who was nice to him gets sacked at the end, and then the dickhead colonel goes, "You were kind to His Majesty. In the future, a blind eye will serve you better." And that's what I see all around me nonstop.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy, because you can warn people. I was warning them 20 years ago, and they'd say, "How did you know all this was going to happen?" I said, "Well, I just put it together and looked at what they were saying."
I'm not that smart. It took me 20 years.
And then I saw what was happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it took me till lockdowns to really kind of put together a lot of shit that if I were smart, I would have put together right then and there. Because people were saying the truth to me years ago when 9/11 happened. Lots of people I'm friends with this guy, Jason Burmis, whose video is quite loose change. And he's suppressed to this day, Burmis. And I watch people saying the shit Jason said 20 years ago that I didn't want to listen to. And, he just does his thing. You don't care. He cares about having some kind of integrity. But I'm not particularly smart. You just can't fool me. This is what I can't believe. It's not that I'm so smart. You can only fool me like, okay, the first 10 times you got me. Like, you can't just do it for 20 years straight. It's gonna dawn on me at some point. I'm like dumb, but I'm not that dumb,
Yeah, well, in the COVID thing, I was actually in northern Turkey in my camper van in a deserted town, which was like some place that had been developed as a holiday place. Someone said, "Oh, go there." I'm not kidding. Ghost town. All the roads broken. Nobody there. There's one guy. He had this camping place on the beach with these glamping huts. Yeah, and he walked his German Shepherd past. He said, "Come and have a coffee." So we're on Google Translate because my Turkish isn't really up to speed,
Yeah.
And he said, "What did you think about COVID?" And I said, "It advanced the globalist agenda." And he just put back, "I think it was a scam."
Yeah.
And he's not an educated person. But you see, the problem is once they've been through the education system and they think, "Oh, governments would never do that." And it's like, oh, my God, you can't get anywhere with those people. It's like what I was saying about the barrister, about the Barry George case. There's another case
the ones that are complaining that the government is racist, okay, will say the government wouldn't do that. You just got done telling me about systematic this and that, but you can't get in your head they might do something else evil besides the thing that you're... starting a nonprofit over?
It's kind of unfathomable that the trust that's still in authority. I mean, I have somebody who sends me messages from Britain, but it's very repetitive because he alludes to them pissing in their own shoes all the time, you see. And I said, well, the thing is that we know that that's what they're doing.
Right.
The way around it is in your own brain. stop referring to what they're doing, because
Yes.
they're never going to stop doing it. They're never going to stop doing it.
No, you get a clamp on your head out of the gate so that you can only think about things in the few ways that have been allotted to you early on. And I watch it all the time. You know, Rogan, when I go mothership, Rogan will fuck with me. I mean, he's fucking with me, but he'll be like, hey, it's the conspiracy guy. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I almost never get to talk about the crazy things I believe, okay? I just know the current events. If you know current events, it sounds like a conspiracy theorist. If you actually know...
Well, as we know, that term was there to shut people down. But
it's from Hollywood.
Yeah.
In fact, it's from Alan Dulles, that scumbag. I can't remember his name.
The Dulles brothers.
Yeah, like
dullest and dullest.
Yeah, well, whenever they got this New World Order thing together, and Transformation of America is a great book because it really, all the things that she says they were going to do, they did. It happened. All this shit happened. That's what blows me away about the book, because you're like, I don't believe a president would make use of a mind-controlled sex slave. Okay, yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't.
Well, they've been doing it for about 2,000 years.
It's only only been around.
It's not a new thing, is it?
No, but they're different. The ones
for 5,000 years, but we don't know how far it goes back, but it goes back a long way.
But let's just look at the record of what they did in front of your face. Never mind what this crazy lady's being crazy about. Let's just look at their record in front of you. If these assholes drank a baby once in a while in the woods instead of what they do, that would be better. If they were like, hey, we're just gonna once whatever our dumb holidays, we're gonna sacrifice a child in the woods to an owl. That's bad, but the death toll of the kids they starved in Iraq. You ever see that when the other one that looks like a bird that was the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. Yeah, and she goes over 5. Now it was only 250,000 Iraqi kids, not 500,000, so it's not as bad. But she goes, they starved to death. Is that worth it? And Madeleine Albright, I think so. She goes, I think so. That's a human sacrifice.
They normalize it in a way that a normal person would think is pretty shocking, but that's a very good point.
That's why you go to school and get controlled so that you can make the tough calls to starve those kids. And to this day, in fact, anybody I know that studies game theory, I hate them. That game theory shit where instead of just taking a moral stand on a thing that you should take a moral stand on, you game it out.
Well, it's a way of taking away inner responsibility.
Yes.
You see, again, it's a degeneration thing. So another thing that's part of that is that we're in a simulated reality. Therefore, nothing matters. Therefore, there's nothing I can do about it. Therefore,
lies. Of course, it's simulated. Game. You're lying.
It's That's an absolute cop-out because you're absolutely responsible for what you're doing in the present moment.
Yeah, well, I know people who were victimized by those programs, and I wouldn't have even known until I started learning about it. I always bring it up. I was in that GATE program we had here. I don't think anything happened to me. It's private contractors, I think, that administered it, so a lot of stuff. But it was just smart kid class when I was a kid. But I talk to other people, and it's crazy, the things they tell me. And it's really weird. But good for somebody I know who has no memories before the age of 15, which I didn't know until I asked, and has to do this weird therapy. I keep forgetting DMR, EMDR. It's something like rapid eye movement therapy that I've only heard of combat veterans with extreme trauma get, or people from SRA. Those are the only people that get that. And I remember like her going, oh yeah, it's just a simulation. And I think that's the thing that helps her hold it together from the experiences.
Yeah, but that's not going to get anywhere.
No, it's not good, but I get how you sell it to people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I mean, I've met somebody who had the same bloodline as part of the Rothschild family, and it was proven. He showed me on the thing, but he said he was taken to this country house when he was a kid, and they did things to him, and they tried drugs out on him and all sorts of things. But you see, a lot of people would say, "Oh, they wouldn't do that." But even if you're in show business, you know, people do.
That's
things.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of it's levels of knowledge. I mean, you don't have to actually go there to know that would happen. You just have to see what people do to each other.
You just did Me Too. They just did Me Too. They just did Me Too. How long was Me Too if we don't even need proof about shit? You just say a thing and it's gospel. Okay. All of a sudden, that merges into nobody's molesting children. That's a conspiracy. So only women in showbiz are attacked, not children.
In the UK, they put up these totally ridiculous gatekeepers, and we found out that they were assets one of them actually perverted the course of justice on camera by persuading an abuse victim to say that somebody who was a very high-profile lawyer had abused him, and he was threatening him off camera to say it. And this person was a bit simple. So he perverted the course of public justice and disappeared. I met this person several times. And so they put these people in to talk about satanic ritual abuse, to talk about abuse, to cover up the real abuse cases which are happening under people's noses. And people never get that in the UK. I said, how many abuse cases have these people uncovered? Zero. Yeah. They're talking about what's already known in the mainstream news, and they're disrupting public meetings and making child abuse look like a conspiracy theory. And no one would believe me.
We've been covering the Charlie Kirk shoot, which, by the way, I went out of my way to try to not see that Charlie Kirk getting shot because I don't want to see someone get shot.
No.
But I saw it. But I still saw it. It still came up in an algorithm. I don't even know how.
Yeah.
I think on YouTube, which doesn't make any sense. I would think they would censor that. Yeah. So that's the thing they want you to see. Like when I was a kid and the Challenger blew up, they wanted us to see that. They hyped it up, and we all sat in class and watched it blow up. Okay, so there are at least 3 to 4 credible alternate theories based on people in the crowd. Things with a palm gun, his mic blown up in his shirt, because Israel just did that to Lebanon with those pagers. They weren't supposed to tell people they were doing that, but they did.
Well, I think anybody with a functioning brain cell can put together why that happened when you see the text messages. No, you don't even have to. You could study it for 5 minutes to know what happened.
Here's the thing. There's at least 4 things that first of all, it didn't happen the way they said. Everybody with a brain knows that. There's 4 other things that are possibilities. Now, when you do a public execution of somebody and you want everybody to see it, you're aware of all this. So that means you got 5 people that look like they could be doing it on purpose, of course. Of course you have people there as a decoy.
Yes.
And that way we could argue about the nuts and bolts of how they did it, and it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, I think this is another point of when
wilderness.
It's the diversion principle. It's getting people away from the purpose of what it was there in the first. What was the purpose of doing it? We know what the purpose of doing it was. That's clear. The rest of it is smoke and mirrors, and they will exploit that to get you going down rabbit holes while they're doing something else. It's the oldest trick in the book. It's the magician with the thumb tip.
Yeah.
Look over there, and you're not looking over here.
Right.
You see?
The first magic is lying. The most basic occult magic, like the first magic was like lying. That's the first reality altering magic there is. And then there's degrees. You could take it all. And then once you get enough people chained together and observing it, you can really affect reality. There's the low magic,
the television's an ideal thing for that, because without the television, there wouldn't be terrorism.
That's right.
There wouldn't be any terrorism if we didn't have television. They could never get away with what they do without the television.
Yeah. Well, if I was a dark occultist, I would call that the plane of cause. I would buy a newspaper or a TV station, and that would be my plane of cause to affect my dark will and then cause effects in the real world. Because now I got everybody's view on this thing, and now you got to perceive what I want you to perceive.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? It's just a business plan for the world. And that's what people have a problem with. And this is the thing about how everything's captured. There's a system of moods. So even those people who think they're outside and they're like, I'm truly awakened. And this, no, you're not. You're being steered. You're being steered just in another way, but you're not seeing it because you're full of hopium. And then you go, don't be negative. You must be a shill and all this.
Black-pilled.
You get so fed up with it that you're seeing things on a level above what they're capable of doing. And I was really shocked after the COVID thing about people in Britain, because I thought some of the people who listened to my show did have the bigger picture. Then I find out that they didn't. And they've gone backwards. They've actually gone backwards. They've regressed into further arrested development. And it was shocking at first, but now it's kind of inspiring, because there was a true fork in the road.
Yeah, right.
And the idea is, if you get on the right trajectory, stay on it, don't get distracted, and kind of don't get energy harvested by nonsense.
Yeah,
and that to me is vitally important, because the media age has completely taken that away. And I know people from 20 years ago who were on it. They were doing stuff. They're like dribbling fools now, watching nonsense. And I think, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Because they followed every news cycle and every fake truth that they were put into. And a lot of them got hooked into the New Age thing because they found it too painful to look at the real truth. So
what if you're an atheist now and you're a good, when I was in New York, a nice smuggerant atheist. I mean, I would say I was atheist, but I certainly agnostic, and I'll get my news off of Bill Maher and like the Daily Show maybe, or John Stephen Colbert show. 2012, that was like, it was like smart to watch them. Now, meanwhile, they probably sucked as much as they do now, but I wouldn't have known because I wasn't paying attention to news for.
Yeah, but it's degrees of the veil lifting, isn't it? And I think that I think if the veil lifts too quickly, people get into this state of trauma. So they therefore look for some way out of it.
That's how mystery school works. You can't just tell rich people the truth.
The traumas that have happened to me, the intense, really weird shit that I was doing a gig with this fella called Ian, and he's a well-known guitarist on the rockabilly scene. And he had his head in his hands and he was saying, "Oh my God, Mark," he said, "the past 10 years, it's just, I can't believe it. It's like I'm in this whirlwind and I can't get off." I said, "Yeah, but in a way that's a good thing because it made his playing so exciting because he was always on the edge." And it's this hypervigilance. You have to manage the hypervigilance, I think. And then you get into another thing. And to me, this is fascinating. It's like self-development on a completely different level. It's away from all the me stuff. You're not thinking about yourself anymore. You're thinking on a much bigger level. And then you go back into talking to people and you realize that they're only thinking about themselves. It always comes back to them. It always comes back to them. And you think, but I've never talked about that. You know, it's incredible. Yeah, I think that penetrating the veils of the, and it's like, you know, it's like the sink or swim thing. I suppose when you go out as a stand-up, but trying out new material, it's sink or swim. That's exactly what it is. You can't. Well,
I started out in all like they call it the Chitlin circuit here, but I started out. I didn't do like it was the black rooms and then mainstream, which I guess is like white people. But so. It was pretty good I started in where I started because I was afraid of it. And now looking back, those audiences were pretty nice because I wasn't any good at it. But I was getting real audiences. So they're bad reactions or good reactions. You're at least getting an audience. You're not getting 4 open micers waiting to go on. So you're getting real feedback. Yes. So it's invaluable to get that, you know? And then once you could get your head into the water and it's not so bad to get once you have the thing of like, they'll Cebu me or whatever. Once you get past that, it's great. The thing I can't believe it takes, I don't know why it would take so long. Things now that I'm way better at it are things that you would think you would have figured that out like the first day, you know, like, but I just did, like just being in the moment or not trying to make it the same crowd from last night. Real simple shit, but that's the shit that's the most elusive is getting to that real simple. And it really is amazing.
It's like, I think it's like a magic thread, isn't it? It's like, it's like a thread of providence. Like you're on this thing. And then sometimes it could just be somebody who ruins it at backstage. Yeah. It could be anything. And it does the whole, you have to be really vigilant about that, I think, because it's like with creativity, like when you're getting ideas, I found that getting into a wilderness situation gave me loads of ideas, but it's kind of like when I was doing the gigs, you'd have to have this resilience, but the resilience to it would be like, I'd be sat backstage having a beer or something, keeping away from the public. And then when you go on, it's like this, it's a preparation phase. And I think that's,
right.
There's a lot of, you know, things that are similar with performing and getting through these veils, because you're testing yourself to the ultimate degree if you go out on stage on your own to tell jokes. It's a very good thing because you find out who you are very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And you know, I go on podcasts and shit. Like, I stole this from Michael Malice because he'd always do it. There's some hilarious. The screenshot is one of the funniest things I've ever seen because it's him and Jordan Peterson, and Michael Malice is wearing Ultimate Warrior face paint and like a Russian to look like the QAnon shaman. And it's like them having a serious. It's like this is how evil works. And it's just see Jordan Peterson. Mike has this, and when you watch it, so first you're like, why does he have that on? They don't address it. And then you forget he has it on, and then you remember he has it on. It makes me laugh. And you look in the comments and be like, I can't listen to this because he has that on. But what he's doing is hitting your subconscious immediately with a stupid outfit. The value of that dress-up shit, I didn't realize until I started doing podcasts, but I got it from him. So I'll go. My Jesse Michaels, who has his last few episodes are pretty good, I must say, Jesse Michaels. But he has like a UFO where he talks about UFO shit. It's a pretty popular podcast. But I went on dressed in my esoteric Kermes Tres Orgasmus Excalibur outfit. And the dress up thing, it's so stupid, but for some reason, I know why they do it in all these shows. That's why when I did stand up in England, it was so much more like theater-y than what I was used to in America. It was so much more like you think about your clothes and your silhouette and shit, which I would have never done from here. But that stuff is a way of programming people. It really is. Going through the veil, or however you called it.
Yeah, this is the spectacle thing, isn't it? I mean, I learned that from old performers, you know, like the old Variety days. They called it vaudeville in America, but Variety in Britain.
Right.
And I knew people on the tail end of that, and they would wear the most ridiculous outfits, and their acts were actually very simple. But it goes back to the showman thing. Yeah. That you know it. And you see it a lot.
You project your reality on them easier. It's just expanding your domain.
There's people like sadhus. I was in Nepal for quite a long time, and they're very transparent and fake. But the Westerners like them because they think they're giving them knowledge. They all talk the same word salad bullshit, and they're trying to sell you a flower or give you a picture of Shiva or something.
Right.
But the people in Nepal go, "Oh, F off," you know, get out, you know. But I saw one of these guys in Kathmandu, and he had a yellow dyed beard, and he had a yellow outfit on, and he was holding himself, and he was doing this sort of weird Tai Chi thing, and I looked at him as if to say, I can see right through your bullshit, mate. And he gave me them. He must have picked up my thought, because I'd seen through his bullshit. He was a fake guru. And this is a very interesting point, because the UN do it. They dress people up as indigenous people in ponchos, and they talk about Pachamama. They don't know F all about anything.
Or they play some awful music.
Indigenous. Everyone's bloody indigenous to somewhere, aren't they?
Well, it's just I hate these marketing terms so much. We're going.
Well, that's what it is.
Let me just see if I got any super chats real quick, and I got to wrap up. But thanks for coming, man. Your channel's great. Let's see. Oh, I have once. Thanks for cleaning up the audio, fellas. We've had endless audio complaints, but I think it worked out good today.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I'm going to recommend everybody, because we didn't have time to get to it, but your Tartaria video I loved, because
we took that one apart because that was another psychology. Talk about mud floods, Tartaria. They all latch on to the same thing, but Tartaria was a real place, and it was a real empire.
Right, you know? but it's not the way it's portrayed to people.
No, it's not. It was a real place. It's on the old maps. Alexander
it's actually very interesting, and I would tell people to watch a video on it, because I just want to hear something I haven't heard before. When I start hearing the buzz phrases and shit over and over, like mud flood, and I'm like, are you joking?
Oh no!
You know, the one where nuclear weapon zone exists.
By that? Yeah, it's form of NLP. They just come out with this stuff, and you get a kickback from it as well, because the people who've bought into it hate you for pointing out that there was a real place.
Yeah, no, people want you to be a quack. I mean, they want it. They'll feel cheated. That's the old lady relationship with a TV preacher.
Yep.
Or even like Mike Epps used to have a joke about it, about when the housing collapse happened. He goes, old ladies were like snapping out of the Holy Spirit. You're like, did he just pass that plate again? Because they know to some degree the show they're at. Wrestling fans know it's fake. They just like it.
Yeah.
So they expect their dollar's worth of show. So as long as you're fulfilling that, they're not going to be mad at you. Do you know what I mean? You got to fulfill your showmanship. They paid their money. These old ladies want a certain show they're going to get. It's not like a stripper. It's like a spiritual thing, but they want that show. They know you're full of shit, a lot of them.
But they're
complicit.
And distraction.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate coming on.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for having us on.
And check Mark out on Odyssey, too, because a lot of his good videos.
WindowsOnTheWorld.net.
Yeah, a lot of his good videos you're not going to be able to get on YouTube, but the information is on there.
200 shows that were never on YouTube on the
There's a lot.
website.
It's shocking the amount of things you're not. We're supposedly better than China, but I don't think that we are. Actually, I think we're pretty the same. Well, you guys got ID,
but we've still got a sense of humor, and we've still got power and control over our own destinies.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for watching, everybody. You just got derped.
Cheers, Kurt.